Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Check. Good, good. Yeah, good. Oh, great, great.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stream this evening. Hope you're doing well. How's everybody doing in chat here? Okay, get the show on the road. Oh my. Okay, Carrie, I'm working on it. Okay, thank you. Catherine Grant, howdy. Hello, Kev. Let's turn that right down. So, the question, will Bill C-63 actually protect children? You know, I don't have any children myself, but, you know, I've been trying to poke as many holes as possible in this thing. And I actually ran into someone in a freedom fighters or freedom leaders group who is actually a part of an amazing organization called Kids First Canada, a parent association of Canada. And she is joining with me. She's joined with me right now. We're going to have a conversation all about Bill C-63 and kind of look at it from different angles. But let me it's going to take a second here to set it up. So just be patient with me, folks. Let's get Helen in here right now. And let's see if I remember how to do this. Hi, can I hear you, Helen?
Hi, good to be here, Greg.
Amazing. We can hear you. Technology.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Just gonna line you up over here. I'm gonna go. Is that right? Yeah, I'm gonna go over here. Awesome. So, Helen, thanks for being on the stream. Maybe give yourself a quick introduction and tell me a little bit about Kids First Canada and sort of how you came to be part of this organization and how we got here.
Kids First Parent Association of Canada was started in 1987 in Alberta. Okay. We're a registered nonprofit we're registered in BC now, and we're a registered charity. We're a non-sectarian, non-partisan, independent, volunteer parent-run group. And our purposes are support for children's optimal well-being and support and recognition for parental care of children. I
Awesome.
got involved when I was living with my young son in a basement suite, and my upstairs neighbor's landlord had a very small daycare, and I realized that because they actually had a registered daycare and I was just a regular parent, they got a lot of information about stuff, including public consultations that regular parents didn't get. And when there was a raid on a grow op next door, the RCMP came to the home and told the mom upstairs of the daycare that because she had a daycare, he had to inform her that there was this grow op next door. But as a regular parent, you wouldn't get that information. So I thought there's a bias here.
So
there's a problem.
So that's fascinating. So this organization is from 1987, you said. By the way, let us know if the audio is all right for everybody who's listening. So 1987, you said this organization started. Has there been a history of, parents being concerned about specifically the government not keeping kids safe in Canada? If you could, I know there's probably a lot, but maybe if you could give me kind of sort of a Coles Notes of that, what that looks like.
That safety of kids hasn't been our main focus, but it's been, one of the many current concerns as, optimal well-being of children and parental care of children. I mean, you've got government intervening in the parent-child relationship in Canada. Remember the residential schools. Let's never forget that. At the school system, the mature minor consent laws, and the child protection services, the daycare services. There's many ways that government interacts with the parent-child relationship, and that's where we kind of like to stand up.
Awesome. So before we get into Bill C-63, I'm curious because when it comes to I guess freedom fighters in Canada or people who are harshly critical of the government, there was obviously a massive influx of that, starting with COVID and lockdowns. There's a whole litany of things that I think are negative consequences specifically for children. But tell me how that. Well, first of all, when did you have you been part of Kids First Canada? How long have you been a part of the organization, and how did things?
About 20 years, not since the beginning, but about 20 years. So I've been working on these sort of issues for 20 years. Yeah.
So tell me how things maybe intensified or maybe the organization got more popular during COVID. What was that like?
Well, COVID was interesting, right? I mean, in some ways, many parents and kids actually did better because the kids were at home, and relationships that have been kind of neglected and stuff were maybe strengthened. In my own neighborhood, I saw families walking in the local parks together, which I've never seen together. A family of 4 or 5 walking through the trails together near here.
There definitely was a silver lining for some people who were. But
the other side of that was that this, the online learning was just insane. You have children, kindergarten kids doing online kindergarten, jumping up and down in bed, doing online kindergarten PE. That's actually happened. And then other kids, kids 10 years old spending 6 hours a day online. There's, like if the government really is concerned about children's well-being, they wouldn't be doing most of what they're doing. You would never have a child required to be online 6 hours a day, or online kindergarten would exist, but it does exist. And there's no regard for the research about children's well-being, the peer-reviewed research in all these policies is, we'll just do remote learning. That'll solve all our problems. And of course, it doesn't solve any problems and creates more. So, the government insistence on kids being online a lot with no restrictions. The government doesn't inform parents about the problems. Government doesn't restrict access to, the schools are increasingly, even if you're not doing an online course, your kids very likely to be online, including maybe on a phone, just to do their French or their math or whatever it is.
Yeah. So let's get right into it then, because we're kind of segueing into how this relates to Bill C-63 and this bold claim that the government continues to care so much about children. We had a phone call several days ago, and I kind of wanted to touch on three broad brushstrokes of topics because, in fighting against this bill, we need to respect the fact that these politicians are really good at what they do in terms of lying, misleading, deliberately misleading the public with what their stated goals are for this legislation, specifically Bill C-63. And the Trojan horse is we're protecting kids online from online harms, from bullying, all these things. And so I wanted to get into that. But the three broad brushstrokes that we kind of talked about earlier was, in general, there really is not a popular conversation about these devices in kids' hands, and there's no sort of controls whatsoever or sort of advice. Whenever I talk to a parent or teacher, I always ask them, do you have any rules around using these devices? And it's always quite, I find it a little bit creepy when they don't have any rules at all. And I tell them, well, I'm addicted to my cell phone and I'm a grown man, and we're giving this to kids a lot. So that kind of topic of how there's just a total lack of conversation around, being conscious of giving these kids these addictive devices. And then number two, and this is a very interesting one, which you already alluded to, that there's a trend of schools or teachers kind of going around parents when it comes to the privacy of kids. This obviously gets into the, the transgender education, indoctrination. And then finally, the third related point is Canadian institutions are quite obviously guilty of sexualizing children more and more. And this is one of the stated goals of Bill C-63 is to prevent, sexual exploitation of children. Meanwhile, our public broadcaster CBC has aired programs such as CBC Drag Kids. That's just one example. But broadly, those are kind of the three topics I think we'll touch upon. Is there anything that you want to jump into right now, Helen? That to start, I know that's a lot, but
well, I mean, the devices, like the restrictions on devices. For example, I'm more tuned into what's going on in BC, but I'm aware of other provinces too. Like our Premier David Eby here in BC in February said that they were going to, the people sort of got the impression that they were going to ban cell phones in schools, but that wasn't actually what he said. The government's going to require the school districts to have a policy about cell phones. The policy could be do whatever you want. It's up to the teacher, total ban or whatever. So right. As a parent or a kid going into school, you have no idea what that's going to be. And you can't control it, and you can't find out ahead of time, really. I mean, they'll have a policy, like a district might have a different policy than another district, but there's no total ban on cell phones in school, for sure. There's some kind of restrictions. There's something about going on like this in Ontario, Quebec, but I don't know the details of that. But he also announced that the BC government is going to go after, I think, the social media companies for their harms, just like they went after the tobacco companies. But I mean, the government has in its power right now, and always has had the power to, for example, label devices, just like we label cigarettes. That's been requested or suggested numerous times, or to just reduce to have a policy that you can't just use your phones and devices and laptops and all the rest of it constantly in the classroom. That remote, I mean, like really, you can take kindergarten online, you can take woodwork online, you can take every single course you can think of in BC online. And if you actually are going to school in person, you might be given a lot of online work. Like you're in your French class and you're required to use your cell phone to access to do the material, to do the course. This is, and parents, children, students have no way of knowing what the teacher's going to require, the school's going to require. So it's a total free-for-all, and there's no regard whatsoever for the peer-reviewed findings that show that this is all bad for kids. It's bad for their mental health, bad for their physical health, bad for their emotional health, bad for everything, and it's a very suboptimal way to learn for anybody. So, but they just pursue it, and they don't use the power that they have. So when they say they're concerned about kids, well, then why haven't you put even a public information campaign out there on buses or leaflets or whatever, saying that it's not recommended for toddlers to be online at all, on any kind of screen at all. I mean, I take the bus and I literally see babies. The parent gives the baby a cell phone, and the little baby's eyes are glued onto that thing. And it's like, I mean, I've talked to the parents, as much empathy as I have, like that you're damaging your child, and guess what? They will put it away. But there needs, the government could provide at least information or restrictions or something. They're not doing anything. So when they say they care about kids, it's like, no, you don't. I mean,
good for you. You speak up on the bus and you say, hey, that's really bad for your kid, right? You do that?
I mean, I've done that because
Nice.
it just grieves me and I care about the parent, I care about the kid, and just have not I do it gently. It's easier for a woman to do this, I'm kind of motherly or whatever, so they don't get offended. And but it's like, if I saw a child, taking cocaine on the bus, the parent was giving them cocaine, I might say something too. But I mean, there's a role for government in regulating the corporations selling crap to us that is damaging. Like, we regulate certain products, and it's like, this is an addictive product that's, I mean, we know that children's well-being in Canada is plummeting in mental health, academics, physical health, well-being. It's not going well for the kids. The kids are not all right, and government has, I believe, a role to protect kids, and they're not. I mean, and the stuff that they say, I mean, I know this, that they don't care about kids' well-being, because working on daycare issues for 20 years, where all the peer-reviewed research says this is a bad idea, this is not good for kids' well-being. And they say, the federal government says that this is the best start in life, the very best start in life for children. Like, that's what they say.
Who's saying that?
The federal government. The federal government, Trudeau, the best start in life. It's like, it's in writing. It says that in their stuff, and that the policies are designed to be, they're high quality, where all the research shows that they're inadequate, low, mediocre quality. So they're just flat out lying. And when you're talking about little children, like when you hurt a little kid or damage their well-being in some way, that's not just sort of a short-term thing, like they hurt their knee. It's you're damaging the systems that are building in their brain, their neurons, their immunity, like everything. And so you're creating damaged adults. So when we follow these policies, like in Quebec, it's 1997, they started their daycare policy. They have increased youth crime. This is the best economists in Canada. This is their peer-reviewed research. And we're like, if we cared about kids, we would follow at least the best research, and we'd also respect parents' rights to raise their children, without the government actively coercing us financially or socially. I mean, when the government keeps telling you, like, it's been over 20 years, I've been hearing, it's high quality, it's good for your child's health, well-being, academics, and everything. And then you might start to believe that, and therefore follow what they want, even though it's not true. So,
well, if the government said it, then it must be true.
Yeah, they keep saying
it. and these lies that you say they're telling about these programs, is this specifically online learning that they say is so fantastic?
Well, online learning, I'm talking about the daycare programs. The online learning, they COVID massively ramped up the use of online learning and remote learning. So they kind of normalized it, and they never, like they just don't. Well, I mean, everybody knows the quality sucks, but they don't say that. I mean, and there's no, like, a warning label, like, this is, not the best, but if it's, works for you, kind of thing. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you just don't care.
Sure. So let's slow down for a minute here. You made the comparison to cocaine. And some people might think that's silly, but even for myself, if the government said they were going to take away my Wi-Fi and my TikTok, I would be like, no, stop! Like, there's no way you're doing that. But and I can only imagine the sort of even more profound sort of impact that has on kids in terms of fiending for the dopamine rush and the stimulation that they would get. Because back in the day, for me, I had boop boop. I had like Nintendo, like the original Nintendo Entertainment System, which was a blippity bloop machine. And going outside to kick the soccer ball was a much more stimulating experience than playing Mario. But these days, with these smartphones and these tablets, with the Retina displays, where we literally can't even tell if it's on a screen or not, that's really scary stuff. But before we go into sort of the online learning stuff, I want to kind of rehash kind of what you just addressed there. The government was wrong. There was peer studies proving they're wrong. This is all alluding to the daycare program.
Yeah. Yeah. The government preferentially funds non-parental care, especially daycare centers, like institutional care. Like one child is getting like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of subsidizing for their care, and the other one who's being looked after by a parent gets zero because the government defines childcare to specifically exclude parental childcare. So, the bit like literally $30 billion more went into this system in the recent budget.
So in a way, this is financially incentivizing parents to use the daycare facilities as opposed to taking care of your own child.
Yep. Or even just having the opposite, like what if you wanted to use a grandparent or a nanny or a friend or whatever? Mm-hmm. Those options are either not funded at all or like a little tiny bit of money.
Okay, so tell me what that distinction specifically looks like, because let's paint a scenario where you're a working mom and you have a kid that needs daycare services. You have what? There's a daycare down the street that would be funded, subsidized by the government, and then, yep.
Well, like they call it $10 a day daycare, so that's not in every single daycare, but like for example, here in BC, you have UBC and SFU have daycares, and they charge $10 a day, no more than $200 a month. So if you're a professor or earning $100,000 or $200,000, or you are like it, you get, it's practically free daycare. If you look after your own child, you don't. I mean, if you're going to put that much money, you're putting money into children's care, we'll give it to the parents, and they will use it for their own costs or other costs or some mix of that. But they're definitely incentivizing institutional care. I mean, that is the goal. I mean, this is a blueprint written by the OECD and UNESCO in 2001, which we are following. And the models that document, it's called an integrated approach to early childhood education and care. That blueprint document, the models that they sort of mention include China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Soviet Union as models of integrated early childhood education and care. 2002 OECD UNESCO document. That's a blueprint for what we're doing here. There's no concern for children's well-being in that thinking.
So paint me a picture of how it could be different, because I guess I'm so jaded by the way things are. I'm kind of imagining, so how would that work? The government would subsidize grandpa to take care of the kids? What does that look like? Have we had a system like that in the past?
Well, that basically all that children's care will be funded, whatever funding you're doing, it goes directly to the parent based on the number and age of the children, and perhaps also on income. It could be a means tested thing, or it could be just every kid gets this share. It depends, and just depending on the age and the number of children. So that money that's going now, like a minority of the population, like only about 15% of children are in daycare centers. That money goes to that system. Even if the kid is not in this space, but they're enrolled, the money goes there. And the vast majority of childcare is not funded at all because it's not part of the system. So it doesn't, and the system, like if your child is sick or whatever, or only goes for a few hours a day, they still get the full funding. So the money goes, like we say, fund the child, not the system. The money should follow the child. We say in daycare as well as in education, and people could use that as they see fit.
Right. So right now the money are going to the system and not to the kids. So that's I guess right. The idea would be, if you have children, then you would have some sort of tax benefit to that.
Yeah, well, there is a child tax benefit or Canadian child now. Then they could put the daycare money into that and increase that, or it's called a refundable tax credit or something like that. But basically, right now you're incentivizing people to not look after their own children, and the money's going, like, where does the money go? And the system's being paid, but the kids away or sick, or only using it for a few hours a day, but you're funding it for 80 hours a week or something.
Okay, and let's touch on the peer-reviewed research that says that this is really bad stuff. Could you get a little bit into that? Give us the sort of Cole's notes of
Sure.
what's in there.
Yeah. To Kevin Milligan and Michael Baker are top Canadian economists, like really top economists. They did a study of the Quebec system shortly after it was started, and then 20 years after it was started. And they found that children's health, parents' health is worse. Parent-child conflict is worse. Kids' behavior, like aggressive behavior and all, is worse. And that in the longer-term study, they found that youth crime has increased compared to the rest of Canada following the implementation of this program. This basically was a massive experiment, a huge social experiment on Quebec that didn't happen in other places. So they could just compare the statistics that are out there, and this is what they concluded. And they could, because the government's always telling you, and all the MPs all think that this system, this pays for itself. You put $1 into daycare and it's going to yield $2 or $10 or $15 or $17 benefit. And that's not true. They said that at most the increased tax revenue from increased mothers' labor or labor participation was maybe covering 40% of the program. So you're losing money on it, and it's harming kids, and it's harming parents, and it's making mothers more depressed also. That was another thing, and more marital conflict. It's an all-around bad thing. So that's the peer-reviewed research. I mean, and there's other peer-reviewed research. The more time a child spends in a daycare center, the more risk-taking behavior at age 15, the more aggression and all the rest of it at younger ages. It's why are we doing this? Because there's a lot of research out there that's not peer-reviewed, and that's the stuff the government uses. It's garbage research that's often published by or written by PhDs, or it could be like the bank. I think the TD Bank and the Royal Bank publish this stuff, and the Canadian Council for Policy Alternatives and all the daycare lobby people publish this stuff, and it might have some doctorate sign off on it, but it's not peer reviewed, and it flies in the face of all the peer reviewed evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating because what I was thinking about as you were speaking is even the liberals and the conservatives, like, they both sort of love to focus on money stuff of like, no, like, the conservatives are like, we're going to save you money. And the liberals are like, no, we're going to invest in you and give you money that's going to help you. And never is it mentioned the sort of incalculable or inexplicable negative consequences to the family, for example.
Well, I mean, our policies are harming kids. Like, it's 100% predictable. I mean, when we're seeing it, that there's going to be more addiction, more aggression, more basically dysfunctional behavior, more problematic relations, and poor health and immunity, like short-term and long-term. And it's happening. It's if you want to reduce addictions, one thing you could do is strengthen the parent-child relationship. I mean, remember, Canada has this history since the mid-1800s of attacking the parent-child relationship, and we're continuing in that vein.
Since the 1800s?
Well, yeah, the residential school system, right?
And
the compulsory school attendance laws, like these were done with no concern whatsoever for the parent-child relationship. It's just...
Yeah. So let's go into, I'm going to see if I can get you over here. Just 1 second. Oh, my face is all messed up over here now. Whoops. How do we do that? Whoop. Just give me a second here. I think we'll put us over here. So, can you read this on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is the recent stuff. A culture change. Ontario launches advertising blitz as new cell phone ban goes into effect for public schools. Mm-hmm. Now that sounds like, hey, this might be a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I just read the first few paragraphs. Ontario's new education minister says that the government has begun an advertising blitz to make students and parents aware of a new cell phone ban that will be in effect when classes resume next week. For the coming school year, students in kindergarten to grade 6 will be asked to keep their phones on silent and out of sight for the entire day, unless permitted by an educator.
Unless permitted by an educator. So well, that's not exactly a ban, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a ban means you don't bring your phone to school, or you drop it off at the office at the front when you enter. A very few schools have that, where if you bring a phone, you put it in the office or something at the beginning of the day. And it's for, what about the older kids? It's okay. The cell phones are one aspect, but there's also just the other screens, the what do you call those things? The
Tablets.
tablets and the screens. And well, I mean, it's a step in the right direction for sure. But I mean, you remember the computer companies and all that, they don't want this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's huge money, and the more kids and the more everybody's on screen, the more money they make. And when the government's like requiring kids to do their assignments online, upload your photograph online, do the chat room online, do the with the other students, and do your PowerPoint projects, and use uh, Google Docs. They routinely ask kids to use Google Docs for things. It's like they have no concern
Wow.
for privacy at any level. I mean, it's just routine. That's just totally normal. I
Mm.
mean, it's here in BC. And if you don't want to use Google Docs, and you don't want your kid to do all these PowerPoint type presentations, well, you're going to be in conflict with your teacher, which there you go.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk more about that. The sort of digitization of education that's even happening as low as. I mean, I hope they don't do that in kindergarten.
Well, very few kindergarten kids will do, but you can do kindergarten online, and a kindergarten class actually wasn't even a kindergarten class. It was we have these drop-in parent child or things in schools, some schools here in BC, called Strong Start for age 0 to 5. And when they first opened the one nearest to me, they had 3 IBM computers in them, and a big, huge IBM logo, really big letters. And they'd been donated. Isn't that nice of the company? And the principal who was opening the things was, we want to thank IBM for donating these things. It was like, well, these kids this age shouldn't be on screens at all. And the big, huge logo, like, it's so big, even the little, 3-year-olds are going to IBM in their face all day long, or well, as long as they're there. So, I mean, there's just like they'll sell the kids well-being for $1. They do it all the time. It's routine. Um, it's just, it's, can you hear my frustration? But I mean, part of it, like this online stuff, this increasing amount of online stuff in the school system, and then couple that with, like, I don't know the curriculum in the other provinces, but since 1995 in BC, personal planning, it's called other things as well, but personal planning has been a part of the curriculum. And so when you look at the curriculum in these areas, it's in the PE and in the planning curriculum. Um, kids are to discuss their personal life, like talk about who's in your family, who lives in your house. Um, did you ever have a fight with a friend, and how did you resolve that? What do you eat? What did you eat last week? What do you do out of school? What's your gender identity? What's your sexuality? Who's your friends? I mean, is there anybody at home who cares about you? Is anybody at school who cares about, like? And then this is part of the curriculum. It's like these. So the violation of, like, propriety, like, if somebody asks you these questions, you shouldn't answer these questions, and they shouldn't be asking them. It's not the school's business what's going on in your family life, what you eat at home, what you do out of school time. But that's completely routine. It's part of the curriculum, K to 12 here in BC. Like in grade 10, 11, 12, you might be asked to do an assignment where it's a big assignment where you put your photograph up online on some online platform, talk about your personality, your beliefs, your goals, your family members, the things you like, the things you don't like, and put this all. It's like, this is what we do here. Sometimes, like, I tutor kids, and and friends and my own kids, and they sometimes they sort of feel like they don't want to do this, and I say, don't do it, or just lie, or just tell your teacher that this is a privacy violation, and I won't do it because it's, and like, back off.
Wow. So I'm so.
Graduation requirement.
It's a graduation requirement. I'm so confused. So you said the name of this program broadly is planning or
Well,
something?
it's part of the career and personal planning part of the curriculum, and also part of the PE, which is now physical and health education. They ask these questions, but it could be in anything. You could be doing an English course or something where basically an identity is a big issue, like the creation, like what is your identity? How do you identify as like in your race or your sexuality or your religion or your beliefs or whatever? Like their identity construction is what the schools are very concerned about here. So when you're reading a novel or a story or something, it's not like what happened in the novel and why did that happen in the novel? Why did those characters do these things or whatever? It's, well, how do you feel about it? And do you relate to that? And did something like that happen to you? And how did you deal with it? So it's you are the kids are the curriculum. And it doesn't have to be about sexual stuff, but the sexual stuff comes into with the sexual orientation, gender identity stuff. And then there's also, and then there's also the research, social science research projects they do in the schools, which ask all sorts of questions about your personal life. It's like the schools are not meant to be there for social science research. The kids are not lab rats. They're not like you're wasting kids' time. You're wasting government funds. They do huge questionnaires. Some of them are focused on sexual issues and stuff like that. Like how much do you drink? How much did you use a condom? Blah, 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 all these kinds of things. And then they collect
to high school.
Yeah, they'll be in high school. Yeah. But the,
it sounds like a survey. It sounds like a bunch of surveys asking kids what they're into.
Yeah, they do those surveys. Yeah, but it's like I like they do this in the schools, and they don't ask. They use what they call it's the Human Early Learning Partnership, which is based in BC. But these surveys go from them to other provinces, and there's other surveys as well. And there's the sexual type surveys. But they start them in kindergarten. And they use what they call passive consent, which means no consent. The parents are supposed to be notified about this, that they can opt out if they don't want their kid to participate. But they already have all the data that all the kids' basic, personal education number, personal health number. They already have all that. I mean, it's like the schools are like a place where kids are just not just the kids, but their families, because the kids ask questions about their family. Like, who lives in your house? What language do they speak? What do you eat? What do you do? Does anybody like you at home? I mean, it's just, it's really disgusting what happens in school routinely, like all the time. It's routine.
And what's the argument as to why this would be relevant to educating a child? Give us all the information of what your home life is like.
Well, they say that the information from these surveys is used to create programs to address needs. But no, it's actually used to just data mine the population, especially in BC. Like it's over the top in BC. We have an organization called Population Data BC, popdatabc.ca, popdatabc.ca. They collect and they have all the data on all over 5 million residents of BC, all your health information, all your education information, your income information, your work information. They collect it, and this stuff from the schools goes in there. It's a key piece because it helps to collect all the data. You got that popdatabc.ca. You look on the for researchers and the data. I'm
popdatabc.ca. I'm getting a sketchy looking website that's not secure actually right now.
Is there? No, that's not it. Nope. No, how about pop data? Maybe it's popdata.bc.ca. Put another dot in there. Sorry. The organization is Population Data BC. Oh my God,
this looks
yeah, and go under the section for researchers where it says for researchers. Look under there.
Okay.
And then go to this data available thing.
Data available. Click on this.
Yeah. Yeah, and
core versus non-core. Scroll down.
Go back down. Data sets.
K to 12 socioeconomic index, student assessments.
Yeah, I mean they have all your medical data, like for everybody in BC. Fields available, as I see.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean this is our province.
What is population data about? Providing a range of services.
Well, look at their history thing. Their goal is to be the world's number one source of population data. Like that's their goal. If you look in their history section at the end of the history, that's what they have. And this organization is a private. It's a nonprofit society. So it's not the government, but it's completely funded by the government. Yeah, today, the very bottom there, today, over time, world's most comprehensive data resource
on factors that influence human health, well-being, and development.
Which is everything.
Interesting. I kind of want to watch this video because it'll probably be kind of creepy.
It's Big Brother. And Big Brother's been in our schools doing this, and it's not just the kids, it's like everybody in BC.
Administrative data and you.
The health of our society. What makes some people or communities healthier than others? Population health researchers attempt to answer these questions by looking at an individual's social, economic, and physical environments. When looking at the health of whole communities, however, researchers must examine the lives and experiences of many individuals.
Any kind of data that one of the body has about you.
This is very creepy.
It's very creepy, and nobody knows about it.
I want to play a little bit more. I think you can read the subtitles. I guess this is pretty small for everybody. How do we make this bigger? Okay, just give me a sec here.
What's the difference between a regular notebook and remarkable?
Whoops, sorry folks, just give us a second here. We want to give you the content so it's bigger. I guess we'll go back over here. Skip. Okay. I know you won't be able to hear it, Helen, but I think you should be able to see the subtitles. So we'll just start from this creepy guy talking. This creepy, nondescript yellow person.
Population health researchers attempt to answer these questions by looking at an individual's social, economic, and physical environments. When looking at the health of whole communities, however, researchers must examine the lives and experiences of many individuals. One of the best ways to do this is to use administrative data, personal information that was originally collected for another purpose. As British Columbians move through life, they generate data. When a baby is born, a birth certificate. Other life experiences, such as early education, career choices, hospital visits and other health-related issues, getting married, birthing a child, attending college or university, and dying, also produce data in the form of various records and documentation. This type of unique information is crucial to learning about what is and isn't making us and our communities healthier. Administrative data is collected and stored by a variety of government agencies and departments, who we call data stewards. Because of the sensitive nature of much of this personal data, data stewards have policies and procedures like the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act to keep it secure and safe.
Okay, I've seen enough. This is very, very strange. No
comments. This is what we're doing in BC. We've been doing this for like close to 20 years. It's been growing, and it's because it's a private organization that's run. It's totally funded by the government, but it's not run by the government. So it's not like accountable to the government. So the MLAs here, the provincial politicians, don't know about it. It's not reviewed in Victoria here. I mean, that's just one example of what's going on. I think it's worse in BC, but it's coming to a province near you, or it's already there, but maybe not quite as extreme as it is here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all about helping us, right? Helping us.
Yeah, let's watch just kind of the very end here.
That one change can make the whole community healthier. For example, based on neighborhood rates of child vulnerability, British Columbia made decisions about where to pilot and now expand Strong Start programs around the province. Every individual person's experience can contribute to valuable research, which may then lead to policy change that benefits everyone. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits.
This is so creepy. Because to me, my interpretation is, hey, you don't need privacy anymore. Just give away all of your data, and we will make society better. It's beneficial for everyone.
It's very good. It's very good. Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's one aspect. Those are like the surveys done by the social science researchers, that they collect this stuff and they mine it, they collect it, and they sell it. But then there's also this routine violation of, like, I'm not going to ask you about your household or your personal life because I'm just not that close to you. And we're on this, but it's normal in schools to do that. Kids are asked to just talk about themselves and their family members in ways that, like, I mean, a stranger came up to you on the street and did that, you would know that that's weird. Like, why are you asking what I ate last week? But they're being enculturated. They're being, like, enculturated into a habit of just, give your information, talk to you about your personal information to authorities without question, and put it up online too, usually, or make a poster and put it up on the wall at school about who's in your family. Like, what if the child's, dad died? What if there's a kind of weird situation going on and they don't want to put it on? Like, there's no concern. About anything.
It's so interesting because it's the complete opposite of what we were taught when we first had access to the internet, which is like, don't give out your information. Don't give out your information online. But apparently it's like, if it's the school, you share as much as you'd like. And aside from the whole, government, subject or government sort of student or government young person relationship, this is just a very bad lesson in relationships, period. It's essentially encouraging don't have boundaries. Just, if someone asks you a question, answer it. Just give away, don't have any sort of.
I mean, it's required. You have to really fight to say no. Like I told my son, if they ask you this, tell them no. Tell them your mom won't let you, It doesn't win you any friends at school, or the teachers don't like it when you tell them, no, I'm not doing that assignment. No, I'm not telling you what I ate. No, I'm not telling you what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and like then if you alluded to this earlier, and it totally matches what you were saying, which is, IBM's going to show up at the school to prey upon kids. Like, hey, look at our machines, like, look at our brand. Let's get the kids hooked on this technology soon. Yeah. But for those who don't know, very, very smart economists for years now have been saying the new gold is data. The new gold that you mine is data. And it looks like this organization, popdata.bc, has kind of found a way around, or I guess a very creative, official, over-the-table way of mining that data through schools. Because
it's not just through schools, but schools are a key part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, what happens with that data? Who knows? But I do want to kind of take this conversation to a dark place and tie it back to Bill C-63. I came up with this. It was kind of like as a joke, but the more and more as the dystopian continues, I do feel like it's a relevant sort of like angle to look at things, and that is called the pedophile rule. And the pedophile rule is, if you are pushing for a thing or excited about a thing that specifically a pedophile would like or get excited about, then you should actually not push for that thing. You should actually be very questionable towards that behavior or that policy or that idea. And in my opinion, this fails the pedophile rule. This is something that a pedophile specifically would actually be very excited about. It's like, ooh, all the information that a young vulnerable person has. Oh, you don't have a good relationship at home. Oh, you're interested in this. Maybe I can like look you up on some chat room or something.
Yeah, or what do you like to do after school? What are your after school activities? You go to the park, the library, you hang out, you do all. It's like, but it's just training kids to divulge their information to total strangers as a routine reflex habit from kindergarten on. But you mentioned boundaries. Well, actually, boundaries and consent is also in the curriculum in BC from K to 12 in the physical and health education component. They're supposed to learn to say, for example, in kindergarten, no, I don't like that. But
that's supposed to be a lesson. That's traditionally.
Yes, but they're actually violating the boundaries of the kids all the time. Like, no, I don't want to go to school. No, I'm not answering that question. No, actually, I'd rather be at home, but my mom can't afford to. It's like, to have me, it's like there's this manipulation of the concept of consent, like, because it's really big. You got to do consent all the time, but the kids don't even consent to going to school, let alone to having a particular teacher or what they're being taught. I mean, I'm not saying that they should be able to consent to all that, but it's you're this pretense that school is the safe place. The teachers, anybody, if you're a teacher, you're safe. If you're a parent, you're probably going to abuse your kid, right? So there's this assumption that school is safe, government is safe, social workers are safe, child protection services are safe. Like, come on, man. I mean, like, we weren't born yesterday, but it's.
You touch on a very interesting trend. How long would you say that trend has been going on for, or would you say it goes back to the 1800s? That being that, the parents can't be trusted, but the Canadian institutions and the government and these government-funded teachers can be trusted.
Yeah, well, I would say it does go back to there. I mean, it was the Egerton Ryerson, Ryerson University was named after him. He wrote 2 reports in 1847, 1848. One established the compulsory school attendance laws, and the other one established the residential schools. And he was a very devout Christian. He was doing it. He had good intentions, like the road to hell is paved there, right? But and I'm not saying everything that happened was bad, because it's not. But he didn't trust the parent-child relationship. He thought, we got to have these certified people because they're going to do a better job. They're, this trust in certification and institutions. But I mean, it hasn't panned out. I mean, obviously all parents are flawed, and some of them are very, very flawed, but an institution that's flawed causes way more damage. And like, why can't we trust? What is it about parents that you don't like? It's because a prejudice against the parents is like a prejudice against somebody because of their color or their religion or where they came from. It's exactly the same in the human rights law. It's discrimination based on your family status, and that's not okay. So yeah.
I did want to quickly reference an email I got from somebody. They sent an email to I think it was the Save Free Speech email, and they're really worried. That they say, I personally feel like this is a bill that will hurt children as opposed to helping them. This is regards to Bill C-63. There are evil layers to this bill that involve so much more control and abuse from these psychopaths. I think a way to show how this bill will harm children is to dig into how the country protects pedophiles. Get into the National Sex Offense Registry list and how it was public and is now private. I can see private for some offenses perhaps, but never private for crimes against children. This is all new information to me. I haven't looked into this yet, but I think that, in the spirit of actually protecting kids, that this is something that we need to pay attention to. I could bring up the things that have been mentioned before of, Justin Trudeau next to this liberal guy or this friend who is, guilty of child pornography or et cetera. But it looks like it is more deeper than that, in that, these so-called great policies might actually be all systemic in making kids more vulnerable to sexual exploitation. And I think it goes without saying, the transgender education, and specifically, what was it? It was Bill C-4, right?
I'm not sure which bill that was.
I think it's Bill C-4 that is essentially, it's all about gender affirming care. So, which is an insidious way to say that if you want to change your gender as a young person, it's totally fine. But if you want to try to help a kid not do that, then that is now illegal and now kind of equated to as the same as, you like if you try to convince a kid not to become transgender, it's on the same par as being a child pornographer, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, again, it's like parents can talk to their children about stuff, and if the government thinks that they're not allowed to do that, then that law needs to be challenged, and it's very difficult for parents to challenge laws because we're not like funded by the government to challenge laws. For example, EGAL, Equality for Gays and Lesbians Everywhere, does a lot of court cases, and they are funded by the federal government. So that helps with those legal bills. I mean, and any teachers organization, if a teacher was taken to the teachers union would probably, maybe not in all cases, but help to fund the legal bills,
right?
Where parents are kind of they're vulnerable in that way because they don't have a like our organization is not a powerful organization, right? But the parents don't have something anything like that's equivalent to those kinds of professional union type bodies and advocacy organizations that are government funded. So
right.
it's just sort of getting worse and worse. I mean, I don't know what you know about BC, but part of the thing that started here, and it was at 2006, there was a thing called the Corin Agreement. So the Corins were a same-sex couple. They were both teachers. They're sex activists. That's not a pejorative term in my view, but they made a human rights complaint against the Ministry of Education to say that because same-sex marriage had been legalized in 1995, I think, and they took their case saying that there's not a depiction of same-sex couples and parented families in the school curriculum. So the BC government actually made an agreement. It never even went to a hearing. It made an agreement, the Corin Agreement, with this couple, giving this couple the right or the power to review the entire curriculum, every grade, every course, and make recommendations, and to also recommend organizations to consult with on these issues. And their goal was, to quote one of the Corins, to queer the curriculum. And they didn't want parents to be able to opt out because, you know, if parents could opt out, that would kind of like defeat the purpose.
I just looked this up right now. This is insane. The agreement requires that parents not be allowed to pull their children from any of these classes to provide an alternative delivery of these issues being addressed. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
BC is so ahead of the insanity on this stuff.
Well, I think BC, I'm not totally sure, but it appears to me that BC kind of, we cut the ground and then it sort of goes to the rest of the provinces and we kind of lead the way. Right. But this is some of the sort of underlying stuff that's, I mean, why would a couple of anybody be able to be the consultants about anything?
Yeah,
and to review
let alone a homosexual couple. Hey, we need to look over all the curriculum. How the heck did they land upon this as the solution or a sort of sound policy idea?
So there you go. Yeah, I mean that
sounds like a totally twisted like SNL sketch. Okay, well, we're going to look over this whole education system. Let me tell you, it needs to be more queer. And if any of these straight parents try to opt out of it, that's insane. Well,
I mean, like from my perspective, parents are legally, morally, in every way in charge of their child's education. That's the Supreme Court of Canada. That's the international human rights agreements about the family and about education and all the rest of it, is that parents are in charge of their kids' education and their upbringing. And we delegate to the schools. So if a parent wants that education for their child, that's okay. Parent doesn't want it. Parent wants some of it, but not all of it. The parent is in charge. So, but this sort of going around the parents thing, it's like, like what's up with that? I mean, as soon as somebody's trying to go between the child and the parent, there's an issue. You know, and this routine, like it's this routine now to say, I mean, I call it hate speech because I think it's a form of hate speech when somebody says, well, we can't tell the parents because, you know, they might abuse their kid. It's like, well, isn't there like a some kind of court hearing required, like some kind of a court process to just establish that somebody's guilty? You know, so you're guilty before being proven innocent as a parent. Like we can't tell parents because they may, whatever, hurt their kid. And it's like, how do you determine that? It's like saying, you know, oh, if they're black or they're Jewish or they're Scottish or Irish, they're going to abuse their kids. It's just a form of ism, it's like a racism thing. It's pure discrimination, but it's become routine. And you know, even like the provinces that are restricting some of this to under 16. Okay, so when your kid is 16, the schools can go around the parents. I mean, like if the child does something at school or goes to a healthcare provider, a medical person or whatever, or a psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever, and something happens there and the parent doesn't know about it. I mean, your kid is, I guess they're just tired today. Well, maybe they're overdosing. Maybe they're having a negative reaction to that medication. Maybe they stop taking a medication that they need, but you don't know. But it's your child. You're the one. Nobody else is even allowed to be there to monitor their, their daily well-being. So if the kid, kids have died because they've refuse to get like addiction treatment, and then they overdose, and the parents not allowed to know about the problem. The doctor won't tell them. And this Elliot Yurchuk was a 16-year-old in Victoria who died of an overdose because of this. He refused. He didn't want the doctor to talk to his parents. His mother found him dead in his bed. I mean, this is like what. So when they say they care about children, they don't. And they don't. They're supposed to, like, even like with the COVID thing. I mean, here in BC and I think across the country, children were getting to their own emails from the health authorities that they could sign up to get the shots without their parents' knowledge or consent. They could do it on their own. So whatever you think about these shots, if your child has one or has not had one, you need to know. If you're going on a trip and it requires the shot, but you don't know, then that's going to mess you up. Or the kid had the shot and you don't know, and maybe they're having a reaction, maybe a mild reaction, maybe a severe reaction, but you don't know. And nobody else is there in the home, in their daily life to monitor them. It's completely irresponsible. It shows a complete contempt for children's well-being and for the parent-child relationship. And
can you go back to how exactly they've justified this to be normal, where the school or the teacher is saying, no, this is just between us. We're not going to involve your parent. What was? I know you mentioned it, but could you go back to that? Like, what the justification is?
It's the idea that the parent may abuse the kid, but you can't. I mean, they may not, and usually they don't. And parent-child conflict is normal. It's even sort of required for development. Mm-hmm. Parent-child conflict, interpersonal conflict is normal, and for the state to put the full weight of the state behind the child on the presumption with no evidence whatsoever that parent may be abusive. And what does abuse mean? Like, you might yell at them? I mean, mm-hmm. Because yelling at your child or anything that might make them feel bad in any way is a considered emotional abuse, and you could have the Child Protection Services launch a case against you. But I mean, there's also the presumption that parents are bad and the correlated presumption that the state is good. All teachers, all social workers, all counselors, they're all child protection staff, they're all doctors, they're all good. Mm-hmm. They never harm children ever. They've never done that. So I mean, the evidence is clear that that's not true. So the presumption that's sort of written into the law that parents are or could be very bad, but the presumption is that the state is always benign or is always good, which clearly contradicts all the evidence that we have on those issues.
Right. And is there a specific piece of policy or like protocol in schools, or you mentioned it's a law that says?
In BC, it's called the Infants Act, and you might have heard of the concept of mature minor consent.
This is recent, right?
No, the Infants Act, it's a very ancient piece of legislation that was modified in the 70s and again in the 90s to allow minors to consent to or refuse healthcare treatment if a healthcare provider, broadly defines, think that they're okay to do that. But that's for healthcare providers. Teachers are not healthcare providers. Maybe the school counselor could be, but a teacher has no legislation to stand on at all. A school counselor may be able to stand on that piece of legislation because they're providing a therapeutic service, but a teacher who decides to withhold information from a parent, the thing is, like, they get away with this because parents don't take them to court, and because it's a teacher has it's against their actions, it's against their their professional code of conduct to do these sorts of things. They're supposed to engage with parents. You're not supposed to hide information with parents. So it's also like the human rights codes in all the provinces says that family status is a protected ground. So that means, like, the status of being a parent of a child or a child of a parent, you can't be prejudiced against that. Like, you can't be prejudiced because of their color or their race or their religion. But it's just routine now. It's completely routine to. I mean, when they the provincial governments say, we'll if kids 16 or under 16, well, you'll have to inform those parents. But what about the 16, 17, 18-year-olds? I mean, you don't have to inform them?
Mm-hmm.
Because, if they die in their beds, tough shit. I mean, what is it? I mean, it's nobody else has that. I mean, parents have a legal responsibility, liability, as well as the right and all the rest of it to look after their kids. And you're interfering with our legal responsibilities and our rights, and you're getting away with it. It's basically because parents have a heck of a time even knowing this stuff. They don't. I mean, I'm not the typical parent in this way. They don't know that these things can happen. That's why, this, like last year, there was this huge, the million whatever march and all that. Parents it's beginning to wake parents up to how bad it is, because they're just shocked. Like, how can you do that? How can you do that? How can you, my child is now calling herself something else and I didn't even know, and you never told me. How can you do this? My kid's getting surgery, or my kid's, on drugs for antidepressants, and I didn't even know. It's like,
and from what you can see, like, what are the teachers being told here, or what do the teachers understand that the rules are in general when it comes to, well, you can just tell me, Timmy, you don't have to tell your parents about this. Like, do you know kind of what their understanding of these rules are and what they're told to do?
I think it would vary. It would be, they're getting a message that, it's going to normalize this, call it parent hatred. But individual teachers are often parents themselves, or they might just think they would never do that. I mean, I don't work in the school system, but I tutor kids, and I would hate to do something with a child that the parent would have offended the parents. I mean, I would just apologize profusely and never do it again. Because this is sort of, as somebody who's has access to a child as a teacher, a tutor, a coach, or whatever you are, you have been delegated that access by the parent. And that's legally speaking, according to the Supreme Court of Canada. So when you, that's a privileged position, like the teachers' codes of ethics call that a privileged position, to be able to be around the kids and all that. And you're not allowed to use that privileged position to advance your own interests, including ideological interests, and to go between the parent and the child. Well, something goes wrong, where's the liability? Who's liable? I mean, the teacher's not. They're like, they're never held accountable. I mean,
right.
The social workers, they're not held accountable. I mean, unless a teacher actually, bashes a kid on the head or something, they're not accused of any crime. They're like exempt from liability. Yeah.
So let's talk we need to cover a couple more topics before we wrap this up. So let's keep it moving here. You have the time, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about sexual exploitation of children. Because, we kind of alluded to the education and kind of just specifically we're focusing on the relationship between teachers and students, and how it's kind of muddying the waters in terms of what is private, what should be kept from parents. But, could you, like, if you had a parent in front of you and they were kind of off in la la land, they don't think anything is wrong, and you told them no, like they are sort of exposing kids to more sexual material at younger ages. And they said, no, I don't believe you. That's not happening. I don't believe you. What would you tell a parent like that who didn't believe that was happening?
Well, it would depend on, here in BC, teachers have something called professional autonomy, which allows them to determine how they're going to teach the curriculum and what resources they're going to bring in. Resources means books, articles, videos, websites, assignments, anything. So the way the laws have evolved, or the policies evolved in BC, teachers who are activists have carte blanche to bring in whatever they want. I'm slightly exaggerating, but not very much. So that's what's happening. Plus, they've also pre-approved a bunch of materials. That's a SOGI 123 resource list that has a lot of that. Many people would consider much of it inappropriate or against their beliefs or unhealthy or whatever. And so, because as a parent, you have no way of knowing when you put your child in school what they're going to be taught, how it's going to be taught, who's going to do it, or when. There's no way to know, because it's in BC, the curriculum is so loose, and the teachers have so much autonomy to interpret it, and they can bring in whatever they want. It's I mean, you might have no problem whatsoever, but I mean, it's not just the teacher, it's also the whole school, like the principal or the whatever, whoever puts up all the pride flags and all the other stuff and the posters and the stuff on the walls, the displays and all that. I mean, parents, like Sikh parents telling me, they don't have Sikh flags. They got all these pride flags all over his kid's grade two class in Surrey, which is a lot of Sikhs live in Surrey. So they don't know what to do about it. They get offended. Sometimes they quit school. Sometimes they argue or they go to a private school, or they, but most people, that's not an option, and financially, and they've been told, go to a Christian school, go to a private school, but it's like, that's just, you're not allowed to say that, because as public schools are for everybody. They are legally required to include everybody. Everybody's supposed to be welcome and recognized and treated with respect, regardless of their religion or their belief or their color or their sexuality or anything, which is pretty hard to do. I mean, really, it's so diverse. How do you accommodate everybody?
Well, you run into problems because you have more conservative-minded people who their beliefs are that, transgenderism isn't even real. It's like it's an abomination. So but you also have to accommodate people who thinks transgenderism is a totally valid thing, and obviously you're going to run into conflict there.
Yeah. So I think they should accommodate all. I think the public system, the publicly funded learning system should accommodate all. And the way to do that is one option is to have the parents get the full funding as an option. If you're happy at the school, that's fine. But if you want to kind of make your own education up for your kid, you could hire tutors, put them in this school or for that thing, or do your own learning, or I mean, there's a lot of educational materials and stuff where I live. There's 2 music schools, there's 4 martial arts studios, there's a math school, there's another math, there's tons of stuff not for everybody, but there's a lot of resources around. You don't need to go to school to get an education, or you could go to school or mix it up a bit. But if the parents was there an option to have the full funding, which is, it's something like $10,000 or more per year, depending on where you are and all the rest of it, per kid, that they could have that as an option, and they can, or you got it, like right now, like the state is supposed to be neutral. Like it's not regarding beliefs and morality and religion. The state, which includes the schools, is supposed to be neutral. So they're not allowed to advance Christianity, which they used to do, and they're not allowed to advance any other moral philosophy or belief system. But they are, like, they're aggressively promoting one particular set of beliefs. This idea that everybody has a sexual orientation and gender identity. That's a belief statement. It's a contested belief statement. Not everybody accepts that. But there you are. The government's endorsing a particular belief set, which we did in the past with Christianity, and they need to, just stop doing that, or give us more options.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just massive hypocrites. So let's get into Bill C-63. We're going to talk about Amanda Todd, the story of Amanda Todd, because this bill does talk about how it's going to stop all bullying. It's going to stop all the bullying that's ever happened. But first of all, because we were just talking about the sexual stuff, I mean, how does it make you feel as a parent to see that a liberal minister is presenting this bill that's going to protect kids online and protect them from sexual exploitation, while this same government rubber stamps sort of pride parades where, grown men will be naked in front of children, or rubber stamps the CBC drag kids, or when there's instances of very questionable, borderline pornographic material of minors having sex in schools, which we presume is a great part of the education system. How does it make you feel as a parent when this government, who's pushing or rubber stamping all this stuff, is also saying we're actually going to protect your kids from sexual exploitation with this bill?
Well, it seems to be contradictory. You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. I mean, I just know from all the other issues that they are not concerned with children's well-being. And so when they throw that out, it's like, oh, really? Then why don't, so it's, they're, I mean, if parents want their kids to be sexualized, I don't know. There's actually some restrictions on that in the law, in the child protection law. Like, you can't prostitute your kids. You can't have sex in front of your kids. Yeah.
But you can take them to the Pride Parade.
Yeah. So, if that's, I mean, we have a very diverse society. Some people want to take their kid to the Pride Parade, but there are public nudity laws, and for the government, again, to the government to promote and endorse a particular moral philosophy, which you could call that a moral philosophy. It's, you could call it sex positivism or whatever they want to call it, or relativism or whatever you want to call it. It's a moral philosophy that the government is not allowed to promote a particular moral philosophy. It's supposed to be neutral, so they can't just like endorsing one. So being neutral, what does being the state being neutral actually look like? And yeah, I mean, I would, parents make all sorts of decisions about lots of things, and I don't agree with every parent's decision about everything, or my own decisions about everything either. But when the government starts, it's so involved in all these issues, and it's like maybe the governments should tailor a bit what it does. I mean, the government it's grown, the sphere of the government has massively expanded over the centuries and the decades and the years recently. So now the government is in all sorts of areas where it doesn't need to be. Like the sex activists, whatever you want to call it, like the Jehovah's Witnesses and everybody else, knock on your door and ask for a donation, or put up their kiosk, or have their fundraisers or their bake sales or whatever they want. Why are we like the government shouldn't be funding these organizations or promoting a particular belief set of any sort, because it's a very diverse country. So what's up with that? Why do we have to jump up and down? I mean, if we had Sikh flags or crosses all over public schools, I mean, we would know now that that's inappropriate, because you're promoting a particular belief set. So making the state neutral is actually very difficult, especially in the school system, because in the school system you are going to talk about ideas and history and all the rest of it. So just give people more options. Like, we're going to have a school that's it's all pride, and now there's a school that's no pride, and a school that's half pride, or like we got 3 stripes of the rainbow, but not all. I mean, I don't know, but they're not interested in that. I mean, I think teachers are, and the public is, but I don't think the powers that be are.
Well, I think the problem is there's always going to be a sort of vacuum of morality, and to say that one isn't more important than the other, there's always going to be something that comes out to be more powerful belief. Like, you said, hey, we should have a more sort of neutral system that's more secular, and people would argue that we have that right now with the rainbow flag. They would argue that the rainbow flag is secular, and that the rainbow flag is not a moral imperative, even though it clearly is. But I agree with you, but I'm just saying, like, people are under the impression that that's what we have right now, and it's like this great, amazing thing. So I don't think it's like as easy as just kind of making it neutral, because, I think what we're experiencing right now is a sort of, we're experiencing all of these social problems because of this sort of corrupted version of morality that's being presented by the government, and they're trying to kind of like, mess with everything without sort of kind of robbing us of our own sort of like I don't know, shared sort of social cohesion.
That's the commons. The commons. I mean, the commons is the moral commons. It's like, when we've got such diversity, it's a lot harder. But you're not really trying at this point. I mean, there's been places where people kick up a fuss because there's a rainbow sidewalk or something, and they say, no rainbow sidewalks, or else you got a rainbow sidewalk. You got to have like all these other sidewalks or something like that.
Right. Got to have a Sikh sidewalk. Got to have a
like a Marxist sidewalk. A green, whatever, all kinds of sidewalks. But it's like this. Let's just not do that. I mean, if you want to have your own sidewalk on your own house or something, go right ahead. But you're trying to use the coercive power of the state and the state's funding to push a particular thing. And I mean, one reason they get away with it, because people don't take legal action, because they'll just walk all over you. I mean, people just push their agendas, and nobody really pushes back. I mean, they argue, they protest, but it's the legal action very carefully done legal action to parents don't, who knows about the state's supposed to be neutral? People don't even know that. The teachers certainly don't know that. I mean, generally speaking, I mean, they're supposed to respect everybody of every, race, color, religion, and all the rest of it, and sexuality in their class. How do you do that? I mean, how do you do that? How do you include all? I mean, so if we're so diverse, it's actually inclusion. It's almost, maybe you can do math together, maybe not. Maybe so just let the school system be more diverse. Like, just let it be more diverse, and let the parents drive the education of their kids. But some people want to use the coercive power of the state to push their particular thing. I mean, the Christians used to do that. They've backed away from that, more or less, right? They've been forced to because of legal action. They had to stop doing Christian stuff, requiring non-Christians to do Christian stuff in schools.
And now the tables have completely turned.
Yeah.
Where the people of this kind of rainbow flag morality are starting to impose their will and their moral beliefs onto everybody with an iron fist. And that's what I really think Bill C-63 is. It's just kind of dressed up with a lot of rainbow and glitter, as we're now getting very used to. Generally, what are your thoughts on Bill C-63? Have you given it a read at all? What's your kind of take on it?
I wouldn't like to comment because I haven't. I mean, I understand the concern about child pornography and all that kind of stuff. Well, that of course needs attention. But when they say they care about kids, that's why we're doing this. It's like, I don't believe you, and there's why you're restricting everything else. I just know that the government does not care about kids. So whenever they say that, it's like, why are you doing all these other things? And why are you using this thing that, is a genuine concern that many people, well, almost everybody shares, to suppress other kinds of speech. And I mean, the idea of hate speech, I mean, I don't know. It's so broadly defined, and it's like a potential hate speech. Or what does all that mean? It's like, I mean, are we allowed to say anything? It's very messy.
But as an example, I tweeted this. There was this video going viral of this dad kind of confronting these people, basically saying, "Hey, I think you're filming my daughter at the beach. Like, can you stop doing that? Can you not do that? What's wrong with you?" And it's a very weird video. They act very guilty in it. It looks like this guy tries to like delete stuff off of his phone. But I made the sort of commentary that these creeps could weaponize Bill C-63 to claim that this video is the video exposing them right here is actually fomenting hatred against them and insist that this video be taken down. So even exposing potential child pornographers. They could use this legislation technically to hide this video so their faces aren't out there. They aren't suspected of being preying upon children. And there's a lot to get into in this bill, and we don't have to spend too much time on that. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on have you heard this kind of potentiality of how the bill could be used to potentially protect child predators?
Well, this idea of hate. I mean, you're trying to regulate emotions. I mean, because it used to be where it's your behavior. Like, if I hit you, or if I threaten to hit you, I say, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to kill you. That is a threat or an action. We didn't regulate people's emotions. I mean, you're allowed to hate people. You're allowed to love them. You're like this. It's like, it's just an emotion. And why you want to fomenting hate. I mean, people feel emotions, and, they ought to regulate their own emotions, but the state isn't there to regulate our emotions. That's your own responsibility, or whatever it's by, I don't trust the government in this area. I mean, we've got where I live, we're not far from basically it's a brothel, right? Well, it is a brothel. It's been there for years, and there was more, but there are fewer now. Yeah, a brothel. Yeah, I mean, okay. Or a strip joint. No, it's a brothel. It's I think they call them adult like body massage parlors or something like that.
Oh, right.
It's a brothel.
A rub and tug, I believe they're
Yeah.
called sometimes.
So there was I mean, there's fewer than there were, but there's still like a number. Just I mean, I live in a very like normal. This is not a raunchy area of town. It's very mainstream. But are you checking out who's there? Like the trafficking that's going on, sex trafficking and all that. Do you even know who's going in there? Or like or the women work there? Of how old are they? Do you care? I mean, do you check?
Yeah.
They only check if there's a complaint, and there's no complaint. I mean, it's
Yeah.
and the trafficking issue is real. I mean, it's like like, so now you're gonna.
Yeah, and I think the major point is that the trafficking thing is real, and the major criminal behaviors happen in real life, and it's only after the criminal behavior has happened in real life that there is then a sort of, maybe it gets exposed or talked about, or pornographic material, illegal pornography that's already illegal, gets shared online. But that's a huge criticism of this bill, that if you claim to really care about this stuff, then why isn't there more sort of like in real life sort of precautions that are being taken? And I also criticize the bill as well because they're targeting big tech, but they're not targeting the massive porn enterprise that is headquartered in Canada. It used to be called MindGeek. It's now called ALO. But
I mean, I know that Canada has a reputation for being a refugee for child exploitation and trafficking and all that because we're so slack about all these things.
So say that again.
I know Canada has a reputation for, being a child porn and trafficking kind of a friendly place because we don't really enforce laws, or we don't really have laws, or obviously sometimes the police do a really good work, but there seem to be kind of handicapped. And
I would love to know more about this rabbit hole. If you can give me any sort of breadcrumbs to.
I just know I've heard that I don't really have much of the research on that, but about what Canada's reputation internationally as a place where it's easy to create, sell, distribute child porn and the trafficking things. It's because we don't have a very strong enforcement or regulatory body to do. I mean, even this stuff in the schools, like the books that, well, it's not like it's pornographic, as there's pictures of kids having sex, drawings, not photographs, and the police. Well, some parents have taken these books to the police, and it's like, well, that's an educational material or something. It's I mean, what that's a pretty slack attitude towards these images, which are images that are not supposed to exist. Images of children in having sex, or their sexual parts of their body are not supposed to be around. Mm-hmm. But then it's educational or something like. I mean, I don't know. It's like, how does this happen?
Or as the rainbow-colored haired person would say, it's like, no, this is actually a good thing because this is education, right? And I think you're absolutely right. There is a lack of sort of, I would even say, moral character to a lot of Canadians and Canadian institutions now, where a police officer will just be like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, I still got a few hours of my shift. Like, what do you want me to do about it? And then on top of that, the major failure of our news media institution doesn't help either, because they're now subsidized by the government. So they're not really interested in exposing the corruption, the immorality, the degeneracy of our institutions.
Yeah, I just heard this on the CBC radio this afternoon, or somebody was phoning in and complaining about. It was John Rustad, the new. He's a Conservative Party leader here in BC, and he was saying that we're concerned about these things, these kinds of books with these kinds of pictures and images and stuff in the schools. And the CBC interviewer was saying, what images? Where are those? Where's your evidence? And it's like, well, the evidence is all over the place. It's just go to these websites. And I mean, the thing about child pornography is that you're not supposed to have it. Like, I can't put those pictures online because that's online, and I can't really show it to you because I'm supposed to take it to the police. It's an illegal substance.
Illegal content. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't really show it to you. Or if I do, I might be charged with something. But the CBC, this has been a huge issue for a long time, at least a couple of years. And she said, what is that? I've never heard of that. Like, where's your evidence? It's like, where have you been?
Mm-hmm. How about CBC Drag Kids, the CBC Drag Kids program that you guys funded?
Yeah.
That's part of, another CBC program. How's that for evidence? Encouraging kids to wear makeup and dance around, sexualizing themselves in scantily clad outfits. CBC. Yeah, no, that's a typical argument of like, oh, never saw it. No, what are you talking about? That's not real. And then you show it, and it's like, don't show that. And it's like, what?
You're not allowed to,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I sort of have to get going pretty quick here, but
okay, let's cover Amanda Todd.
Amanda Todd, yeah,
So for those who don't remember, let me bring it up here. Amanda Todd was a very sort of publicized, unfortunate suicide of a 15-year-old, and she made a video that essentially described she used a series of flashcards to tell her experience of being blackmailed into exposing her breasts on webcam and of being bullied and physically assaulted. The video went viral after her death, after she took her own life. That was back in 2012. Her story is obviously being used to try and justify Bill C-63 to say like, hey, this legislation is going to stop young women like Amanda Todd from killing themselves. What's your sort of opinion on that?
Well, Amanda Todd.
She was in BC, right?
Yeah, she was in BC. She was like in the just next in Coquitlam there, not too far from where I am. She was bullied. I mean, that happened. It was a sexual predator from, I think it was the Netherlands that was predating on her. But she was also cyberbullied at school, and because not too long before the Amanda Todd thing, the BC schools were required to have a code of conduct related to bullying. And so because they had this code of conduct, you can't, treat somebody badly because of their sex or their age or their gender or this or that or those other things. The school had no liability when she was bullied at school because they had the code of conduct. So we covered our asses, and if Amanda was being bullied at school and cyberbullied by kids from school, well, that's too bad. She's I mean, would this bill protect Amanda? I mean, when you have a friend of mine has a daughter who's in a not quite as extreme situation, but yeah, the police are involved with that the same kind of issue. If you've encouraged kids and to have what they call it a sex positive thing in schools, and you expose kids to like pornography in the schools, maybe not always, but in some situations, you violated their boundaries routinely from kindergarten on about what's private and what's not, and then this is going to help. I don't know. It's like I don't know. I don't trust them because they haven't protected kids, and they've done things that make kids more vulnerable. I mean, they're breaking the parent-child bond. They're attacking that. And then we're gonna save you. We're gonna save you. And what's your legislation, and why is it so broad? And why don't you get on with other things that need to be done to protect children? And I mean, Amanda wasn't a little girl, but she's 15, and 15-year-old girls are very, very, very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And you've told them that you've given them, you've encouraged them to think that they're not vulnerable, mm-hmm. that you can make up your own mind. You can do what you want. It's your body, your freedom, your whatever. You can do what you want. Your parents, they're probably wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. Trust these total strangers. And she was easily misled, and and just making it easier to
yeah. And I guess one obvious sort of kind of criticism or hole to poke in Bill C-63 is, how would this legislation stop what happened to Amanda Todd from happening? Amanda Todd was preyed upon by, you said, some sexual predator from the Netherlands, some foreign predator, presumably through a private chat room or some sort of, who knows. It eventually turned into some private communication, which is not covered by the bill, and this seems to be the sort of takeaway always with Bill C-63 when you kind of dig into it. It's like, so how would that have been prevented with this piece of legislation? And then there really isn't an answer.
Well, if it doesn't include private communication, because that's
right.
That's typically how these sexploitation things happen. I mean, I think in BC recently we had a teenage boy took his own life after a very short exposure to sexploitation situation. Some gang or something in Africa that's a sextorting young men, boys. Right. It's because it's a private communication. It's like,
well, let's talk about, let's maybe take a step away from Bill C-63 for a second, because when we were talking on the phone, you mentioned how in terms of kids' health in general, there's a lot of downward trends that are really not healthy. Do we know where that's coming from? And could you kind of give us a quick grocery list of the state of kids in Canada today?
Some people would say that it's, I mean, the increasing online time of all sorts is harming, emotional well-being, taking people out of face-to-face relationships. They're also doing less physical activity. So you're just getting physically out of shape. That's been a downward trend for years and years now. It's if you're, well, I don't know. It's like then they keep attacking. To me, the parent-child relationship is key, and also you allow corporations, like all these tech corporations, like just you've taken, you're not protecting kids from these things. Like I feel that there is a role for the government to protect children. Like we have restrictions on drugs and alcohol and cigarettes and driving and all sorts of things, and kids are developing, and you're just letting the corporations do what, just go for it. I mean, when a kid can just, are you 13? You just have to say yes. I mean, what is that? And advertising targeting children. You just used, like, was in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, they removed all advertising restrictions to children. So you're letting the corporations just have their way with kids, and there's no government sort of restriction. So it's up to the parents alone to kind of like fend off this massive pressure on the kids. And parents, it does take a village to raise a child, in the sense that you can't do it on your own. If you're fighting the school and the government and the medical people and the advertising and the screens and all this, you're just going to go nuts. It's like, we don't have a society should function to protect children so that they become like adults as healthy as possible. And we're not doing that. And it's that you're degrading the whole environment, the psychological environment, the relational environment that children are raised in. And it's just sort of up to the parents to do their best. And they're struggling. I mean, you will see parents allowing their babies and their toddlers to be on screens. The corporations are making devices and content specifically for very, very young children. That's like, why do we allow that? Like, why, if you care about kids, you'll say, no, we're just not going to do that. You're just not going to make content for little kids. And you're not going to sell like these cute sort of, little tablet-y things that are specially designed for little tiny kids. Like, what is that? That's just, it shows, we're, sacrificing children on the altar of the almighty buck.
Yeah. And it is frustrating because there's so much working against kids to thrive and be mentally healthy. And a lot of it is, like you said, it's corporatized, it's mainstream, 13 Reasons Why, a Netflix show that basically kind of glorified childhood suicide. If you want to talk about programs that are encouraging suicide, because this is another specific section of Bill C-63. And we also have a government that encourages suicide with medical assistance in dying. So it's obviously a little bit hypocritical to say that, hey, although there's all this stuff, out there that probably doesn't help with your mental health, don't worry, we're going to censor the internet. Us, the government, is just going to take you away from all the harms that are out there. We're going to protect you from everything. Forget about this downward trend of childhood suicide. We're going to protect you with this bill that's going to give us a whole bunch of control over the internet.
I mean, it used to be the media kind of self-censored talk of suicide because it is a contagion. Like people, when you report on that, we know that more people will commit suicide. We know that. And so they just didn't do that. It was very, minimal on that kind of reporting because of people are gonna die because you're reporting this stuff. So this sort of like, can we have some sense of propriety or concern for the well-being of others in our way of dealing with these issues?
All right. I appreciate your time so much, Helen. I do want to ask just one last question. Whether it comes to bullying or whether it comes to helping out a child's mental health, like, tell me about a positive solution that you would love to see if you had the keys to the castle and you could kind of, make a policy or sort of, try to make a trend more popular with schools or with parents to really try to help their kids out with all this chaos going on.
Restrict screen time. The schools should not be using screen time. Get rid of this, they call it the personal and social aspect of the curriculum. That's what they call it in BC, where they're constantly asking personal questions, where the child becomes the curriculum. Just stop that. Or if parents want that, let them have that. But you need to let parents have what they want. And
make it optional.
Yeah, make it up that, like, if you want your kid to be divulging all sorts of personal information, you have that choice. You have that, go ahead, but it shouldn't be the norm, because it's the norm now. Spend more time with your kids, go walk with your kids, teach them how to cook, teach them how to clean, hang out with the dog, go swimming together, hug your kids, love your kids, physically, cuddle up. Parents need to know you're extremely important. You might not feel important, but you are the number one influence. And what is Dr. Gordon Neufeld, leading developmental psychologist? Parents are children's best bet. Parents are children's best bet. And the teachers, with all due respect, I'm a family full of teachers, and that is like, you are a delegate. You are not the one in charge, and you need to have respect the propriety of your role. Your role is to do this. You're not doing everything. You are not there to create the child's identity or influence them with your particular moral philosophy or religion or whatever you want to call it. You might not agree with people, but suck it up. It's like we're a very diverse society, and you have to put up with people who you disagree with, and they're going to raise their children the way they would like, and you don't have the right. You do not have the right to interfere with that parent-child relationship. Remember the residential schools.
And what do you think about specifically bullying? Like, what's your do you have like an anti-bullying sort of strategy or sort of?
Yeah, well, children who are bullied, because that's going to happen, not to everybody, but to many kids, at least in some degree, sometimes severely. The tighter the bond with the parent, the closer the parent is, the less likely the child is to actually harm themselves. This is just how it is. If your kid has a stronger sense of themselves and of the bond with the parent or grandparents, uncles, whatever other adults who care about them, they are less vulnerable to what can happen when you're bullied, like to the self-harm and all that. Amanda Todd was clearly extremely vulnerable, and she was her relationships were all about the internet, and she seemed to lack relationships. There was something not happening there for her in terms of her connection to loving adults who could protect her. Kids are not the ones who raise kids. The system wants kids to be like peer mentors and hang out with the peers all the time. It's like, well, you need to connect the kids with the adults ones who are going to protect them from that kind of stuff, psychologically anyway.
And that's interesting. You're saying a relationship with the parents when in many ways the system or the school system and the government is encouraging the opposite of that, right? Thanks so much for your time. Helen, do you want to say anything about kidsfirstcanada.org before we go?
Yeah, that's our email, our website, kidsfirstcanada.org. You can look at our stuff. We're going to be redoing our website. Donate to us, join us, follow. We're going to be redoing some of our PR. We are not a wealthy organization, but we're doing some looking into taking legal action about some of these issues, and having funding for that would be great. And you would get a charitable tax receipt. And yeah,
Cool.
Parents, you are children's best bet, and love your kids and connect with them as much as possible.
Thank you so much for your time, Helen. And yeah, we're going to save free speech. If you actually really quick just want to say to save free speech in Canada, go to SaveFreeSpeech.ca.
Right on.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
All right. We'll talk to you later, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All righty then.
Okay, Praise. Could you do me a favor? And...
Oh, wait. Hold on. Okay, good. All right. I was worried about that. I'm like, she's still alive. Oh, my God. Hey, that was good. That was a nice chat. A lot of good clips in there. What did you guys think? Hey, we are going to save free speech in Canada. We are going to dismantle all the bullshit arguments for Bill C-63. And if you want to support our upcoming documentary, go to givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. Here it is right here. Oh, now I'm not even on the camera anymore. Whoop. Yeah, givesendgo.com/SaveFreeSpeech. Here it is right there. Yeah, guys, we're going to make it happen. We're going to do it. It's very, very exciting. Special thanks for Helen to be on the program. We are going to react, or we're going to read this Twitter thread about we're going to read this Twitter thread about NATO talking about wanting to censor the internet. But I really need to go to the bathroom. I've been doing this sort of the pee dance for the past 5 minutes, part of my language. But we are going to react to a Mocha Berzigan video while I go to the little boys' room here. Just give me a second. I'm going to watch it on my phone while I run away here. This has to do with the Coots 4 case, and I'm interested. I haven't watched this yet. So, hold on. There we go. Volume up. Good. All right, I'll be back in a second.
I'm outside Lethbridge Courthouse here in Alberta with the breaking news on the Coots 4 story. 9 years is what's being recommended for Tony Olenek and Chris Carbert. What do you make of the latest developments? The men were found not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, but what do you make of Judge Lebrun's comments from Tuesday?
Yeah, it's very interesting, the lead up after the acquittal and the conviction. I mean, they were acquitted of the serious charge conspiring to kill RCMP officers, and they were convicted of the possession of weapons for a dangerous purpose and the mischief. Sentencing was set for today, tomorrow, and we had some additional proceedings earlier this week. But in between that and shortly after the acquittal and the conviction as a whole, for them to appeal before sentencing feels like a bit of a message to the justice. No justice is fond of their proceedings being appealed, period. So the Crown, I feel the Crown put a notice of appeal out to send a message to Justice Lebrun's that take this into consideration, that if your sentencing doesn't fall in line with what we'd like to see, which is, as we've heard this morning, 9 years for Tony Olenek and Chris Carbert, not time served, 9 years, so they would be remanded, well, indefinitely until an appeal or bail and such. I feel that the judge has heard this message and is acting on it. Tuesday's comments by Justice Lebrun's, where he throws out all of Chris Carbert's testimony, calls the man a liar in relation to the events of Coots and the events that led to these proceedings, this prosecution. It seems very extreme. It seems like a very sudden move by the justice, and it reflects this narrative that I've just put out there. It's quite clear what's happening here, and tomorrow or later today, there'll be confirmation of exactly how malicious this prosecution really is. The Crown, one way or the other, even though they've been acquitted of the serious charge to kill RCMP officers, conspiring to kill RCMP officers, they will utilize the additional charges and try to maximize that sentence accordingly. And that to me is a malicious prosecution, and it's a very unfortunate state of affairs here currently in Lethbridge, Alberta.
Tomorrow is the big day, and I will be here to cover it. If you would like to support my independent journalism, please consider donating at mediabizergan.com/donate. Thank you.
Yes, we love Media Berzergan. That is insane. It actually kind of leaves me speechless. What would we do without people like Mocha here, honestly, because this is such an outrageous story that should be even like international news. I wish I was more versed in sort of how the law works, but once again, sounds like unprecedented stuff with the Crown sort of threatening, or not threatening, but sort of suggesting to the justice, like, hey, we want to see something like this. Let's read this again. The Crown put a notice of appeal out to send message to Justice Lebrens that if your sentencing doesn't fall in line with what we'd like to see, which is, as we've heard this morning, 9 years for Tony Olenek and Chris Carber, I feel that the judge has heard this message and is acting on it. Tuesday's comments by Justice Lebrens, where he throws out all of Chris Carber's testimony, calling the man a liar, seem very extreme and reflect this narrative.
I'm outside Lethbridge Courthouse.
Although the men were found not guilty of conspiracy, they were found guilty of possessing a weapon for a dangerous purpose and mischief, over 5,000. Tony was also found guilty of possessing an explosive substance for a dangerous purpose, despite the substance being located over 200 kilometers away from the Coots blockade. Wow. I mean, it's very much more of what we've already seen, which is, if you are somebody who is opposing the government, if you're somebody who is effectively opposing the government or challenging what they're saying or at the wrong protest, then you're going to get treated totally different. You're going to get treated totally different. The law is now just sort of a suggestion. The law is not really firm. It's sort of a flimsy thing that the government is going to bat around like a cat batting around a ball of yarn. Because, you know, it's just like, why all of these laws are supposed to mean something, right? They're supposed to mean something. But no, it's, if it makes the government look stupid, then, you know, all those rules are out the window. How are we feeling? I think we're going to go through this Twitter thread about NATO and how they have a sort of agenda to censor the internet. But how are we doing in chat here? Trent Dabb says, I think if these two men took the help we offered, they would be out right now. Were they offered help? I haven't, I mean, there's so much going on. I haven't been keeping up to date on everything Coots 4 related. But I do want to say, of course, if support this guy Mocha when you can. He's a cool guy. He's one of the only independent journalists in this country that you can count on one hand. And yeah, plus I freebooted his content, so I want to shout him out, of course. And I want to interview him too soon in regards to Bill C-63, because yeah, if there's anyone who's going to be targeted unfairly with everything that's in Bill C-63, it's going to be an independent journalist like this who is exposing the insidious and absurd corruption in Canada. Sin City Captive says, guest said at the end, needing healthy, loving guardians with someone suffering bullying in Amanda's case reminded me of Derek mentioning Duplessis orphans, healthy Canadian children deemed mentally ill. I'm not even sure what that is. Is that too loud? guess I'll look that up. Jeets are trying to get Mocha deported. No way. I guess that sounds about par for the course. Oh my god. This sounds so spicy. Holy crap. Derek Rance is always on top of like the craziest parts of Canadian history that no one's heard about. Duplessis orphans. The Duplessis orphans were a population of Canadian children wrongly certified as mentally ill by the provincial government of Quebec and confined to psychiatric institutions in the 40s and 50s. Many of these children were deliberately miscertified in order to acquire additional subsidies from the federal government. They are named for Maurice Duplessis, who served as Premier of Quebec for 5 non-consecutive terms between 36 and 59. The controversies associated with Duplessis, in particular the corruption and abuse concerning the Duplessis orphans, have led to the popular historic conception of his term as Premier as Le Grand Noirceur, the Great Darkness. Holy. Le Grand Noirceur refers to the regime of conservative policies undertaken by the governing body of Quebec. The Duplessis orphans have accused both the government of Quebec and the Roman Catholic Church of wrongdoing. The Catholic Church has denied involvement in the scandal and disputes the claims of those seeking financial compensation for harm done, as you can imagine. We didn't do it. Don't fine us. It is believed to be the largest case of child abuse in Canadian history outside of the Canadian Indian residential school system. Very interesting. Duplessis orphans. Let's see if there's a TikTok about it. Oh, by the way, we're on TikTok now. Save Free Speech is on TikTok. If you're curious. I know, I'm just typing away. What's he doing? Duplessis.
You ever hear that theory? It's probably the one theory that's...
Whoa, chill. Duplessis orphans. I'm not seeing anything here. Did I spell it right? Okay. Yeah, that's the same spelling. Okay, let's go to YouTube. Nothing on TikTok at all. Okay. Couple videos. Let's watch these. Oh yeah, we are on TikTok. At SaveFreeSpeech.ca is our TikTok. We'll be posting all of our content there and other stuff. If you guys are on the Chinese spy app, then yeah. Which one should we watch here? That's got a little bit more views. This is CBC. Nothing too long. Just kind of shorter stuff. Let's watch the CBC one. Turn this music off. Duplessis orphans find connections overseas. I don't know if the connection's overseas. Now let's do this one. Let's see what the Montreal Gazette has to say.
And we're back.
Great.
The team is looking
An
down
ad.
the barrel of a $455.
Amazing. We love advertising. We love it. Lampshade Etiquette says, love your content. You're a gem, dude. Thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. My father-in-law was there. Everything was hush hush. Was your father-in-law Duplessis orphan or something? Stranger Things or Dante's Inferno, says Sin City. One More Quarter says, excellent conversation earlier. Much thanks to the both of you. Take care out there. Thank Rick Rock, said Wallbanger. That's funny. All right, let's listen to this. Duplessis orphans.
Albertine Allard is 82. In 1937, at age 8, she became a patient at Saint-Julien Hospital. She would not leave until she was 38.
Whoa, what?
1937, at age 8, she became a patient at Saint-Julien Hospital. She would not leave until she was 38.
She was in a hospital for 30 years.
Today, she lives with 2 other ex-patients in a foster home run by Luc Allaire and his wife. Yvon Lamotte worked at the hospital for 32 years. He's one of a group of residents who want to save the hospital from demolition.
Okay, this singing in the background is very creepy. It's throwing me off.
Across the road, children who died at the hospital are buried. Other former patients want to see the hospital razed to the ground. Albertine likes to sing her own version of a Catholic hymn where she calls herself a malade libérée, a freed patient. Aux sources de la vie, nous venons puiser. Aux sources de la vie, malade libérée.
Okay. That was just kind of scratching the surface. I'm starting to suspect that there's not many deep dives on this topic. It sounds like a crazy story. Sounds like another crazy Canadian story of government corruption that not many people have heard about. It reminds me of my normie friends who are always like, oh man, Canadian politics is so boring. And it's like, it's really not. It's really not. There's just not many people who are telling a very captivating story about it, or a captivating enough story about it. Yeah, what the... Canada's dark secret? This is just residential schools, I think. Catholic scandals. Again, this is a short one. Anyway, this is good. This is good stuff to know. Okay, we're at 2 hours here, so let's go to this. Let's get to this Twitter thread already and read through it. Or maybe I should. Yeah, let's talk about this actually real quick. Actually, no. I should let the sugar high hits me. Let's read this stuff. Where is it? Come on now. It's over here. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So yeah, this came across my feed the other day. Censoring the internet is a NATO initiative. The pro-NATO Conservative Party supporting Bill C-63, Oh, I can't even read my own tweet. The pro-NATO Conservative Party supporting Bill C-63 or something similar is very realistic. I should have put this sentence backwards. I'm in writing mode right now. It's very realistic that the pro-NATO Conservative Party would support Bill C-63 or something similar. That's how you should have read it. I mean, it goes without saying that when it comes to online censorship and big tech, the guy who owns Telegram recently got arrested in France and then got released recently, but he's still being held in France. The last report I heard on that is that he was invited to France by Macron. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't been keeping close tabs on that, but it's certainly relevant to the conversation of free speech and censorship online. If the guy on a free speech platform like Telegram, which has been largely unmolested by censorship, like, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some shadow banning and things going on, but Telegram was like so important during COVID. Telegram was one of the only platforms that, I mean, there was a time during lockdowns where I was just looking at like the different Diagolon channels. I would just like open up Ferryman's, Telegram feed to find out what the fuck was going on, or some other people that I was following at the time. And that's really all we had. You'd be censored on Twitter. This was before Elon owned Twitter. So like Twitter was censored. Everything was totally censored. I think I was going on Gab at that time as well, if I'm not mistaken. You couldn't find anything. All right, let's read this Twitter thread. Let's wrap it up for the night. Come on. All right. NATO 2030 toward a new strategic concept. That concept being social media censorship to protect its political center of gravity. What an interesting concept. Oh, that's pretty small, eh? I don't know if that's much better. War by other means. This is from chapter 13. Securing NATO against disinformation. Disinformation, fake news, and since the COVID-19 pandemic erupted in 2020, infodemics have been added to the vocabulary of societies across the world, often conflated with other terms including misinformation. Tainted leaks and propaganda. Disinformation is the use of false or manipulated information to distort the truth, weaken trust, and undermine democratic discourse and practices. This is all very much the same kind of globalist language that Justin Trudeau would say. You know, it's undermining the democratic discourse. You mean it's exposing the corrupt governments that are in place? I could see why that would be a threat to your rule, to your false authority. Okay. For NATO, a defensive military alliance based on collective defense, an attack against one is an attack against all. That is, that's very, oh man. An attack against one is an attack against all. Except for Russia, right? You're allowed to, NATO who is like exists to oppose Russia. You're allowed to shit on Russia as much as you'd like. An attack against one, except for Russia, is an attack against all. Disinformation has until recently been rarely discussed, much less considered. Oh, it's also worth mentioning for those who don't know. I just realized the connection here. Telegram is owned by a Russian guy. I'm pretty sure this guy is Russian. He's from Russia. Yeah. So anyway, now we're talking about NATO. Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty, however, underscores that peaceful and friendly international relations come not from military strength alone, but strong and free member state institutions and an understanding of the principles behind them. Disinformation, which is part of broader malign influence operations, directly threatens these principles and institutions. Its acceleration in recent years has brought disinformation onto the transatlantic agenda. I mean, what is this? It's so hard to even make any sense of what they're saying. Disinformation, which is part of a broader malign influence operation, directly threatens these principles and institutions. At the operational level, disinformation could increasingly probe and erode NATO's defense and deterrence. At the strategic level, long-term information operation narratives. How old is this? Because I mean, it makes sense that this is coming out when everyone is critical of leaders for just sending so much money to Ukraine, right? You know, people are being critical of sending all like billions of dollars to Ukraine, and people are complaining about it, as they should. And now NATO is like, we need to stop disinformation. NATO's enduring purpose could weaken solidarity and cohesion. Oh, okay. Sorry, that's from the previous thing, right? 219, yeah, 289. So let's do that whole sentence together. At the operational level, disinformation could increasingly probe and erode NATO's defense and deterrence. At the strategic level, long-term information operations and narratives skeptical of NATO's enduring purpose could weaken solidarity and cohesion. To protect its political center of gravity, NATO should crystallize where disinformation fits among the multiplicity of threats likely facing the alliance in the emerging security environment, and then further evolve its approach to countering disinformation. All right. Sounds like it's going to be censoring the internet. The threat of disinformation. Disinformation is used strategically to challenge the very foundations of liberal democracy and of transatlantic relations by affecting political decision-making, societies, and the very functioning of democratic institutions. This whole thing is so, it really is the doublespeak. They talk so much about democracy, and they use this code word disinformation of people who dissent. It's not disinformation, it's dissent. It's people who disagree with the NATO agenda. It's dissenters. Let's read that. Let's replace disinformation with dissent, as in differing opinions than what our agenda is. The threat of dissent. Dissent is used strategically to challenge the very foundations of liberal democracy and of transatlantic relations by affecting political decision-making, societies, and the very functioning of democratic institutions. Yeah. And of course, the irony there is dissent is supposed to be freely celebrated in a democratic society. But they've just kind of reframed dissent as disinformation. Political warfare and disinformation, or dissent, allow authoritarian regimes to present the authoritarian governance model, and during COVID-19, its crisis management, as a superior alternative to democracy. And there's a source here. That's fucking crazy. Political warfare and disinformation allow authoritarian regimes to present the authoritarian governments. I'm so tired of shit like this, man. Like, it never stops. It never stops, and it's like, this isn't some blue-haired freak talking about this. This is NATO. This is NATO talking about this, saying, you guys need to worry about the authoritarian regimes. By the way, we're going to control everything that you're saying and thinking. Anything that is disagreeing with us is now disinformation, and you must be silenced because it's going to challenge our agenda. It really is. I mean, it's so trite to bring up 1984, but like, it really is this sort of inverted language that's going on. You need to worry about the authoritarian regimes out there. Someone actually, I think it was, should I get the clip? How long will it take me to find that clip? Yeah, no, I'm too lazy to find the clip. The clip is the guy from Trigonometry, and he's on a chat with somebody, and they say, how many people in Russia do you think got arrested for, posting online? And they're like, I don't know. And the person said, 300 or whatever it was. And then he said, do you know how many people got arrested for posting online in the UK? And I'm pretty sure the number was like 3,400. way more people are getting arrested for speech in the UK than Russia. Who's the authoritarians? Who are the bigger authoritarian countries at this point? You know, this whole democracy thing is such a farce at this point, especially whenever it's like used by NATO or the UN or globalist politicians. But you guys know this already. You guys know this already. I'm just beating the same old fucking dead horse at this point. It's a classic we need to protect democracy trope, says EdgyDTV. Yeah, exactly. EdgyDTV says protecting it by taking away people's voices and putting them in jail. Right. That's right. That's how we protect democracy. We protect democracy by throwing those who disagree with us in jail. That's what democracy is. We have to stop the authoritarians. That's the only way to stop the authoritarians. I mean, on the plus side, this seems like pretty easy to explain to people how fake this is. So I'm feeling good for our side, because I feel like they're trying to like they're using the same lies for like years and years, and it's like it's been decades. These lies are running out of gas. Okay, these lies are running out of gas. People are not going to be buying into this anymore. Let's continue with this NATO agenda. Worryingly, various actors within democratic societies and NATO members are also turning to disinformation and information suppression to advance their political goals domestically. This is just so it's so transparent. It's like, hey, people are disagreeing with us and they have different political goals than us. We need to do something about that. That's kind of what's interesting about this globalist language, isn't it? It's like you can basically make a report that tells you exactly what you're going to do. We are going to censor the internet. We are going to censor everyone we disagree with. But you just kind of like use different language and kind of invert like the definition of things. Like, you know, disinformation is actually dissent. We're the authoritarian regime. Like when we say democratic ruling, we're actually talking about our authoritarian rule. They're a threat to our authoritarian rule. It's all backwards. You know, just use this reference card, and then you'll be able to decode what we're doing here. We're trying to silence everybody who disagrees with us. Let's read this whole paragraph. Can you guys see that? Okay, yeah. Scroll it up a bit. Okay. Oops. A prominent tool of political warfare during the Cold War, Soviet campaigns of active measures and disinformation, propaganda and disinformation went under the radar for the better part of the past 30 years in the West. The Kremlin's military aggression in Ukraine, illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 revealed Russia's use of information as a weapon, amplified and strengthened by modern technologies, social media, and a revamped state media apparatus. You know who else has a state media apparatus? Canada does. We subsidize the news here, just like Russia and China and North Korea. Isn't that cool? Disinformation campaigns became a central tool for denying, justifying, and supporting its actions in Ukraine. It created an alternate reality meant not only to obscure Russia's involvement, but also to completely discredit the... I think we're out of the... Let's see, what's the next tweet? Is this the same page? Okay, no, this is different. We didn't get the rest of the sentence. Oh well. NATO's approach to disinformation. Since its founding, NATO's approach to countering disinformation has evolved alongside the threat environment. The alliance has always recognized that security and stability derive from military as well as non-military means, but has historically prioritized the former over the latter. It took several years and the proliferation of direct disinformation attacks against NATO for the alliance to recognize the threat and begin operationalizing a response, an ongoing process that continues today. During the Cold War, NATO prioritized conventional defense and deterrence and only tangentially considered disinformation. I'm just going to do the highlighted bits now. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, The conventional military balance shifted in NATO's favor. The alliance began focusing on non-military threats, although not always disinformation. The 2014 Wales Summit Declaration suggested enhancing strategic communications to counter hybrid threats without naming disinformation. NATO's current strategic concept likewise excludes disinformation from its list of conventional threats. While NATO was quick to enhance conventional defense and deterrence alongside the eastern flank after 2014, there was insufficient support within the alliance to similarly adapt its non-military means. Blah, blah, blah. Most recently, the NATO 2030 initiative was launched at the 2019 London summit, and on the heels of President of France Emmanuel Macron calling the alliance brain dead to further strengthen NATO's political dimension. This was a forewarning of sorts that NATO's non-military malaise could have wider consequences. Oh God, the future is here. Questions about the evolution of the disinformation threat strike at the core of NATO's political mandate as a military alliance and its ability to access and respond. Net war has changed the nature of conflict. Wait, will this make it bigger? Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, baby. Net war has changed the nature of conflict with profound implications for disinformation, and the more general manipulation of the information space through political, economic, technology, cyber, or social engineering tools have emerged in the past decade as profound mutations in the way we understand security. I guess I can't, damn, I can't scroll up for you guys. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to keep reading. Social media has changed not just the message, but the dynamics of conflict. Second, disinformation and digital deception are used in the battle to achieve cognitive and behavioral outcomes in societies. National militaries are reorienting to also face information warfare. Significantly, domestic politics has also reordered around the ability to create and influence or manipulate online constituencies. Online constituencies. Political actors in most countries, whether democratic or not, now rely on troll armies. Whoa, this is getting good. Political actors in most countries, whether democratic or not, now rely on troll armies and digital influencing campaigns to alter democratic processes. What the fuck? Oh my God! Here's a thought. If you don't dehumanize the trolls, maybe you could say that these are actually just citizens of that national country participating in democracy. They're sharing their version of reality. They're sharing their opinion. This is a threat to democracy. Oh, these trolls. No, it's your citizens voicing an opinion on something. What do you mean the trolls are? No, you're just dehumanizing opinions you don't like on the internet. Like, this is nuts. Political actors in most countries, whether democratic or not, now rely on troll armies and digital influencing campaigns to alter democratic processes. How is, I mean, calling it, they try to just dehumanize this practice, saying it's a troll army influencing campaigns. What's the difference between a democratic campaign and a troll campaign? At the end of the day, it's going to be American citizens pushing for something online. But no, the troll army is going to affect the democratic process. Yeah. This shift in domestic political debate also has an impact on the alliance's internal functioning, as political actors in some member states are increasingly utilizing information and digital manipulation. They are not only departing from principles and values NATO is built upon, and clearly outlined under Article 2 of the NATO Charter, but are also creating additional avenues for malign foreign actors to infiltrate democratic societies and weaken them from within. What the hell? Like, democracy does not mean anything anymore in this in this NATO report. They're trying to influence things. That's a threat to democracy. So people pushing for their ideas is a threat to democracy. That's the whole premise of democracy. This shit is so exhausting. It's so exhausting to read through this shit. Man, where was I? Third, authoritarian nations attempt to polarize and weaken national security structures, diminish trust in alliances, and thus hamper the cohesion and effectiveness of national and supranational defense structures. They're trying to. There's a lot of translation. There's a lot of nationalistic people who have political or are gaining political power, and they're saying, "Hey, fuck all of these United Nations, these globalist, alliances. Let's just look after our own country. Let's not send billions of dollars to Ukraine in a war that's just a bloodbath that isn't going to change anything." Authoritarian nations attempt to polarize and weaken national security. And the implication here is that, nationalists in Western countries aren't nationalists in Western countries. That's just disinformation. That's literally just Russia puppeteering us, which is precisely the narrative that came from, about the trucker convoy. I'm pretty sure even Gerald Butts was parroting this idea that it's oh, well, people are online and they're getting manipulated by Russian bots to care about their own country. It's authoritarian. Yeah. Anti-nation narratives and conspiracies. Anti-NATO narratives and conspiracies are an important tool in the arsenal of digital manipulation campaigns undertaken by pro-Kremlin groups. Well, there you go. Either you're pro-NATO or you're pro-Kremlin. There is no in between. It's impossible to be a Canadian citizen who just doesn't like your money going to Ukraine. That just means that you love the current Hitler, which is Putin. NATO is portrayed as an alliance that fosters insecurity rather than protect its members. It is depicted as an extension of the U.S. military-industrial complex. I mean, they're the biggest. Is that the end of that one? Yeah. I mean, the U.S. military is the biggest contributor to NATO, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't been reading the captions. Yeah, these are good captions. During the Cold War, we prioritized conventional military, but in the social media age, we're losing our political support because people spread, quote, anti-NATO narratives and conspiracies online. So we need to think of war as stopping our own citizens from speaking freely online. Yep. By the way, this guy is a executive director of, what is this? Foundation for Freedom Online. I just started following them recently, but Mike Benz is a former State Department cyber security, author of The Unpunishable Monstrosity, Weapons of Mass Deletion. Interesting. Because of our own citizen... Oh, wait. Let's read this. We need to switch our censorship focus from external enemies to our own citizens. Great. An increasing risk for the transatlantic alliance also comes from within. The landscape of disinformation is changing from identifiable external enemies to blurred boundaries between foreign state, non-state, and domestic actors, making attribution and response increasingly more difficult. They hate nationalism, man. They hate patriots. Like NATO just hates it. Oh, man. Because our own citizens talk badly about us online, we need to treat their tweets as a theater of war. We need to remove the basic distinction between peace and war. We must preserve our political mandate. We need to push national censorship policies across all NATO countries. All right. Policy recommendations. NATO should develop a more holistic understanding of security that encapsulates shifts in information technologies and use of strategic narratives. NATO currently responds ex post to discrete disinformation campaigns at the operational and strategic levels rather than preparing for the inherently unpredictable nature of threats in the emergent security environment, recognizing that unconventional means could pose an existential threat to the alliance. NATO's updated strategic concept should remove the distinction between conventional and unconventional threats and emphasize that future threats will occur across the spectrum of peace to war. War is peace. War is peace, you guys. Oh, God. The alliance should also expand and integrate the political mandates of NATO divisions and departments, focus on emerging security challenges, including disinformation. This would first and foremost signify that threats to information integrity would be elevated to the same importance as other types of hybrid aggression, as in the cyber domain. NATO should maintain a degree of ambiguity about whether disinformation constitutes an attack on the alliance. This would be an important step towards equalizing threat perceptions of disinformation within the alliance and create a set of common denominator policies that would create more national information policy coherence. Bruh. We, NATO, need to spy on and psychologically dissect our own citizens in order to see how they interpret narratives online and that threaten our political mandate. NATO needs to tell its own story better. This is such a tell. This is such a tell. We're not brainwashing people very well, guys. We need to tell our story better. We're losing them. We're losing them to disinformation. Disinformation preys on existing vulnerabilities and opportunistically utilizes events or crises. Yeah, to make us look bad. Yeah. This can also include open source intelligence gathering using social media and other technologies to understand the social context and monitoring how potential target communities attach meaning to or interpret disinformation narratives. This is actually really interesting and connects directly to Bill C-63, like a sort of part of it that I don't think many people have talked about that's been on my mind, which is if we create a digital safety board, regardless of like stopping online harms, regardless of that, one of the outcomes, if big tech agrees to it and they don't just like leave the country, it would give the government and this body access to a lot of data of certain users on big tech. They always like to disconnect these two ideas and say, no, the Digital Safety Commission is about just holding the big tech platforms accountable. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, you get access, you get the keys to the castle of big tech, and you get to peek behind the curtain, government. And what will that entail? Would you get to learn, oh, someone's pushing a misinformation campaign against NATO. Let's research let's look into all of their data. How much data can you give us, Facebook, Meta? How much data can you give us, Google? Oh, can we get access to their Gmail? We got to see that. It's an online harms thing. You know, the potentiality of exactly what this is talking about in NATO. This can also include open source intelligence gathering using social media. They can't do that right now. They can't just simply at the drop of a hat say, hey, give me a bunch of your citizens' social media data. Big tech would be like, I know we're shady, but we're not that shady. But with Bill C-63, it would give the government the opportunity to, strengthen the relationship with social media platforms to get more data from people saying the wrong things on social media. Let's read that one more time. This can also include open source intelligence gathering using social media and other technologies to understand the social context and monitoring how potential target communities attach meaning to or interpret disinformation narratives. See, they're already talking about targeting specific communities. So much for the disinformation, right? So much for the disinformation being the problem. It's like, no, there's certain communities who are posting this disinformation and we need to spy on them. Next tweet, we need 24/7 disinformation monitoring system driven by artificial intelligence. Oh my God. Every word our citizens speak, every sentence they write, analyzed by a NATO political thought crime radar system. Are you serious? How much longer is this? Okay, just a couple more. Let's see what it says here. 24/7 disinformation monitoring systems driven by artificial intelligence. What else does it say? Promising new tools coming predominantly from the private sector include machine learning to remove fake social media accounts, blockchain technology for secure digital identity systems. "24/7 disinformation monitoring systems." That sounds like a nightmare. Because who gets to decide? ChatGPT is going to decide. Oh, sorry. MSNBC.com said that this was misinformation. Sorry. Snopes AI. Polyfact. PoliticoFact. What are the fact-checking websites? We're going to have fact-check police of the caliber of Snopes monitoring what is disinformation and automatically censoring it 24/7. No thanks. No thanks. I would just go to the dark web at that point. I'd be like, okay. Internet's cooked. Time to go on a dark corner of the internet, and that'd probably be even less safe. We need to use our muscle as the military to get political bodies across NATO to pump millions of dollars into brainwashing our citizens. Psychological defense. And financially steroid injecting censorship NGOs. Oh, and we need to capture the media. The independent media. Brother. NATO should also use its political dialogue mechanisms to create a coherent methodology across member nations. This could include the creation of institutional networks, society-oriented activities, infrastructure building, research, education, and training tools that go beyond mere debunking and strategic communications. The Swedish model of psychological defense also includes crisis modeling drills for a variety of civil actors, including media outlets. Crisis modeling drills. I have so many questions. Just as NATO played a key role in the 1900s and early 2000s in getting Central and Eastern European countries on a stable democratic course, Article 2, which calls for strengthening democratic institutions, should be brought back to the forefront of political deliberations within the alliance. NATO's continued support and cooperation with free and independent media is essential to strengthening resilience. Secretary General Stoltenberg has stated that, quote, the best response to disinformation and propaganda is the free and independent press. When they ask difficult questions, then disinformation and propaganda will never succeed. NATO should therefore encourage journalist exchanges, facilitate media access to activities and exercises, and urge member states to invest in a more robust, independent local media presence. This was a very similar sort of lie that the Liberal government was trying to push to fund the independent media. Let's see if I can find it. Maybe we'll put local in there too. This is kind of it. Federal monies kept hundreds of journalists employed in Canada, but the program's set to expire after mass layoffs across country's largest news outlet. Diversity hire? After mass layoffs across country's largest news outlets, we're missing a the there. After mass layoffs across the country's largest news outlets, independent publications await news of their fate. Diversity hire. Who wrote this? AI. Okay, we cannot continue. The Local Journalism Initiative. There we go. Actually, I think this is it here. Local Journalism Initiative. March 1st, 2024, announced $58 million investment to extend the Local Journalism Initiative. Local journalism. Yeah, so for those who don't know, I mean, I wonder if we could look this up too. Is there a big list down here or what? I mean, essentially, although there's a bunch of local outlets for news in Canada, a lot of them are just under the same 3 different umbrellas. I believe it's Bell, Rogers, and Chorus, if I'm not mistaken. Shaw Media recently got bought by somebody. Shaw Communications was acquired by Rogers in April 2023. So although there's all these like local media outlets, they're local, they're independent. No, they're all under one of 3 umbrellas, which essentially has an oligopoly over the media industry in the country. Newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, they're all local. No, they're all under the same 3 different umbrellas. There are exceptions, but even them, they are they're probably doing the government subsidy grift anyhow. So it doesn't really make a big difference. They're going to have the same sway because they're getting paid by the government. So yeah, let's read this last part again. Oh, you guys couldn't see that here. NATO's continued support and cooperation with free and independent media is essential to strengthening resilience. The best response to disinformation and propaganda is the free and independent press. When they ask difficult questions, then disinformation and propaganda will never succeed. NATO should therefore encourage journalist exchanges, facilitate media access to activities and exercises, and urge member states to invest in a more robust, independent, local media presence. Member states should pay for the news media. In a democracy, these are the righteous democratic nations of NATO encouraging their member states to pay for the news. Paying for the news, the state paying for the news, is something that happens in communist China. It's something that happens in Russia. It's something that happens in North Korea. Not in democratic nations at all. And this is the same NATO warning us about, don't worry, look out for those authoritarian states. Look out for those authoritarian countries. They are telling you the wrong story. They're manipulating nationalists and patriots to... This is distracting me. They're manipulating nationalists and patriots from supporting NATO. Can you believe this? They're telling their own version of reality. There's a troll army trying to manipulate the conversation. It's a threat to democracy. It's so repetitive at this point. Like we see it everywhere. It's the same sort of double speak lies. It's ridiculous. But needless to say, Bill C-63 fits in perfectly to this stuff. It just slides in there. Chef's kiss. It fits in right there with Bill C-63 because it gives the government control and surveillance over people online, all of social media. So there you go. But hey, that was. I apologize if I was kind of low energy tonight. You know, I was doing all sorts of stuff to try and we updated the website. Actually, let's show this off for a sec. It's there's still a lot of updates coming, but we are getting there, folks. We're making things look better. This is the new homepage for SaveFreeSpeech.ca. You can see the little donate button in the corner there. Very cute, right? That goes to the Give Send Go page. Amazing. And yeah, while we're at the Give Send Go page, if you want to support our upcoming documentary, big things, we're going to tell the story. We're going to tell the story of what this bill is actually about and why it would be the end of free speech in Canada and why, we're going to raise the alarm bells and show Canada what's really going on here. But, this is the new updated site. Lots coming. There's going to be a couple other sections over here coming. We do have our social medias on the Join Us page. This page still needs a lot of work, though. Not going to lie. Uh-oh, I'm doxing my WordPress. Whoops. But yeah, you know what? Let's end it off with promoting this thing as well, which is very, very much related. If you've been following along, I've been covering the many different sort of how can we tell people what's going on with Bill C-63? How can we explain the urgency to people if they don't know that political prisoners are a regular thing in this country? If I go to like an average normie and say, hey, like this government or this bill C-63 is going to it's going to be used for political purposes to censor people the government doesn't like. People might look at me sideways like I have 5 heads. Like, what do you mean? Like, when has that ever happened? When has that ever happened? And that's why I'm sending out a call to freedom fighters or to political prisoners. I sent out this video today, which kind of explains it. Hey, Canada, if you have been slandered by the mainstream media or by anti-hate, I want to hear from you. You see, a lot of people in Canada don't know that people are persecuted for their political opinions, and that's a very disturbing trend. So we want to hear and document your story, collect as many as possible to tell the greater Canadian public that this is going on. So if you're a doctor or nurse who was persecuted during COVID, if you're a freedom fighter activist who got arrested, if you're a mom or parent who was pushing and speaking up against the transgender ideology in schools, we want to hear from you. There's a very simple form below here on Twitter or X, and I know that I may have spoken to some of you already before, but still, we want to kind of make sure we're not missing anybody. And you can fill out that form and send it to info@SaveFreeSpeech.ca. This will help us tell the rest of the country what's really going on in Canada. That's right. That's right. We need to send them, I have talked to a lot of the people who have been persecuted for their political opinions in Canada, but I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably I haven't talked to, and I do want to hear more about their story, get their information, get them on a live stream, chat with them about their experience. And the idea is to compile all these interviews, compile all this evidence, really like break it down into as simple a form as possible, short videos, short explanations, showing how outrageous all of these things are, and just sending out these shorts, sending out these messages, showing more Canadians that this is happening. Because I really feel like the dust is still almost finally starting to settle since the trucker convoy in 2022. And it's almost like I'm trying to think of like some war analogy. Where's Jeremy McKenzie when you need him? But like, everyone has scattered since then. It was chaotic. There was this horrific thing that happened, beaten by police. People are dealing with that charge. People are dealing with this charge. People are dealing with all sorts of, they're getting bogged down by social pressures, by having to pay for lawyers, by, maybe their family's getting torn apart all at the same time. Maybe their regulatory body, if you're a doctor or a nurse, is crunching down on you, and now you're in a lawsuit with them. Like, everybody has to deal with their own battle, but they all have the same thing in common. Which is these people spoke up about a specific issue that the government did not like, and they faced the consequences for it. They were targeted for their political opinion. That is not something that happens in a free country, you guys. That's not supposed to be something that happens in a democratic country. Yet it's happened dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times especially since the trucker convoy. So I want to round these people up. Let's get their stories together. Let's get our story straight. Let's start championing our side. Let's put aside our differences and start, keep our eyes on the prize here, which is the corrupt regime that runs this place. That's making it so hard for us to ever get ahead or try to have our actual values heard. I feel like going off on the Conservative Party right now, how they sort of like pretends to champion our cause. But has Pierre Poilievre mentioned like one political prisoner yet? Not really. Like he walked with James Topp for like 10 seconds for a photo op and then disappeared. You really don't even hear enough about James Topp either, and what happened to him, getting smeared by some ginger journalist. What was it? CTV at the time, or Globe? Maybe it was Globe. It was Global at the time. But I mean, it's not about, and I want to address this too. It's not about like playing the victim. It's telling the story of what happened to you. It's not about, oh, woe is me. It's more like, no, this is real. This actually happened. Because I was talking to Jeremy. I had a phone call with Jeremy a few weeks ago about this. And I've talked to other kind of people in our space before. And the gaslighting is so crazy. And the normalization of us being shit on is such a real phenomena that it's almost like people who are persecuted in Canada don't even what am I trying to say here? Like that they don't even honor themselves. They don't honor the fact that they are being, it's almost like we have a lack of, because there's been this normalization of silencing us, and there's been this normalization of dehumanizing us and pushing us aside, we are not actually honoring and respecting ourselves. Like, this isn't about being a victim. This is about self-respect. And this is about saying, no, this did happen to me and it was wrong. And it was because of the trends of corruption in this government. And we should do something about it. And yes, political prisoners, people being persecuted for their political opinions, that is a thing that is happening regularly in Canada. And I'm an example of that. And I'm thinking, because on previous streams, I've brought up the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, and they're kind of in the background, one of these groups who is trying to push for this censorship, and they do it by creating this victim porn. And what they do is they round up a lot of people who have been smeared online, or they've been made fun of online for being like fat and Asian or whatever. And they're like, see, look at these sad people. Look at these sad people. This is why we need to censor the internet. And, we've looked at that and said, look how silly this is. This is so cheap. It's so dishonest. It's so not accurate. But the value I see in that, or what I take away from that, is we need to do our own version of that. We need to do our own version of that. They're rounding up people who are crying and mentally ill and like easily offended online, and they're using that as a weapon to push through legislation. We need to do our own version of that, which is round up everybody who has been targeted by the government for their political opinion, or targeted in some way for their political opinion and faced massive consequences, and tell that story to people and say, there's a lot of people like this in this country. It's happening in this country. It's happening. And look at the bill they're trying to pass. It's only going to give the government more tools to persecute even more people for their opinions they don't like, much like this has already happened to all of these people. So that's the plan. That's the plan. To start, it's very, very simple. Send us an email at info@SaveFreeSpeech.ca. That's where you send your email. Make sure the email subject is political prisoner, and it's it's three fairly simple things to fill out: your name and occupation, links to articles that's slandering your reputation. If you've been slandered in the mainstream media or in an anti-hate article, definitely include those links. Also, if you've been just simply arrested for your political opinion, that's totally valid as well. Just put that in for number 2. And then number 3, give a brief 2 to 3 sentence summary of your experience. Just in a nutshell, I know people have very long, I shouldn't say long, I should say complicated consequences that they've had to face. There was this lawsuit, there was that lawsuit, there's this regulatory body, there's a lot going on. And, what I'm trying to say is, like, don't kill yourself trying to fill all this out. Like, just give a brief summary, and then we can get into it in an interview or something else like this, if you're comfortable, of course, coming on a live stream. But number 3 is give a brief 2 to 3 sentence summary of your experience in the following fill in the blank format. Once I started talking about blank, I faced the consequences of blank, and I'm still dealing with blank. again, I'm trying to appeal to all the different people who have faced consequences for speaking up about their political opinion. But I thought that was a pretty kind of fairly simple fill in the blank thing, just to kind of give us the quick bio rundown of why you feel you've been, persecuted for your political opinion. But yeah, that's the plan, guys. That's the plan. That's what we're doing with SaveFreeSpeech.ca. That's some of the more content that we got cooking up. It's not just a documentary. There's lots more stuff, lots more moving parts here going on. But once again, if you want to help us save free speech, go to givesendgo.com/savefreespeech. Send us a donation there. This is going towards paying for media professionals, editors, the marketing of the documentary itself. There's a lot of exciting things going on in the background. I'm not going to say what, but that's another thing that's on the to-do list for me, which is updating this Give, Send, Go campaign, because I want to show people more specifically, what they're going to be paying for, what it's going to be covering, and how it's, the effect that they will have when they click that donate button. But guys, thanks so much for tuning into the stream. How are we doing in chat here? Raging Against the Machine says, exactly, Greg. Focus on one big issue. That's the idea. And I see us as all like working together here, because there's different fronts to this crazy fifth generational war we're dealing with. I brought up Mocha Berzagan Media. He's focusing on like Sikh corruption, I guess, or like the Sikh World Sikh organization. There's all these nefarious connections between that organization and Canadian politicians, and a lot of wasted public funds. And he's crushing it. He's more or less focusing on that kind of issue and stuff adjacent to that, and he's absolutely crushing it. And like I totally think it's somebody else who we should be supporting. And there's other examples of that, but I think there's a lot of positive. I think it's a good strategic move to like focus, have us all focusing on one thing or another, and like really being really strong in that department. Okay.
In Russia last year,
Okay. Can I show this? How do I show this? Let's try to get this to work. A super helpful dag just sent me something that I was looking for. Hold on. How do I do this? Fuck it. Oh, doxed. Oh, does that not work? Damn. We'll save it for another time. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Oh, we're just over 3 hours. Perfect. Kelly Lloyd says, and Air India bombing / Jagmeet. Wallbanger says, Kalistani hijinks. Yes, that diagram is wild. Purple Rain says, thank you, Greg. Have a good night. Thank you, Purple Rain. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Yeah, appreciate you. I guess it's going to be Labor Day this weekend. That's exciting. There is a song that I have, but it's not really done yet, but I'll hopefully be able to turn that around, and it's kind of a racist song, it might be kind of fun for people. But, yeah. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for tuning in. Love ya. Make sure you subscribe to our social medias and all that for Save Free Speech, and, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. Until next time. Why is that glitching? Why is the lobby video glitching? There we go. There we go.